Greetings, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Dreamscapes. Today we have our friend Maya Acosta from Dallas, Texas. She is a health and wellness educator, podcaster, and fellow YouTuber. You can find her at healthylifestylesolutions.org. We're going to get back to her in just 2 seconds. Let's pay some bills. Would you kindly like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about my show, and reach out to me to be a volunteer dreamer. Always looking for more people to talk to. Also, currently available 16 works of historical dream literature. The most recent, I'm going to pop it up right here, Dreams and Their Meanings by Horace G. Hutchinson, lovingly reproduced by yours truly, your friendly neighborhood dream wizard. You can find all this and more at benjaminthedreamwizard.com. Complete list of all 16 books, growing encyclopedia of dream-related people and terminology. Most importantly, MP3 downloads you can take to the gym with you. You know, take me on a walk around town, do the dishes, whatever. Listen to the solving of an interesting mystery. It's kind of how I think of what I do. That is more than enough about me. Back to Maya. Thank you for being here.
Ben, thank you so much for having me today.
That's very nice. So we talked a little bit off the air. Speaking of which, I love letting people in behind the scenes. We always talk before I start. I got to find out what's people's websites. What do you do? And, get the elevator pitch down. So we always talk beforehand. If you ever wondered, I don't just slap you on the air and roll with it like, good luck.
Right.
What is it you educate regarding health and wellness? How did you get into that? And let's tell a little bit of your backstory.
Yeah. Okay. Briefly. So I am a teacher by trade. In my past lives, in my past life, I worked with children, and then I also taught at the college level. I got interested in the field that I'm now in as a result of two things that happened. One, I married a vascular surgeon, so that was kind of really unexpected. And then two, after marrying him, I learned about the power of eating healthy foods. And then later, about a field called it's called lifestyle medicine. And just to give you a little bit of a background of what that is, there is an actual American College of Lifestyle Medicine. There's also the British version. And what this institute does is it trains health professionals. So it could be, physicians, dietitians, people in the health and wellness field, health professionals more than anything. It really trains them on how to have these conversations with their patients when it comes to what food recommendations they can make, using exercise as medicine, managing their stress, building healthy relationships, and then kind of guiding people away from things that could affect their health, like alcohol consumption and smoking. These are areas that most professionals are not trained in when they spend years and years in medical school. For example, the physicians, they can spend 8 years plus and never once have a course on nutrition. So if you think about it, Ben, if you ever go to your doctor and ask, are there any foods that you recommend, or does certain foods play a role in my health? They may or may not know how to answer that question. And so this institute, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, trains people, health professionals, on how to have this conversation. They hold like a conference every year with workshops that are all based on science. And the goal is to understand that these pillars of lifestyle medicine can help prevent disease. But if you're already living with a condition, it can help halt, and in some cases, even reverse disease. So my husband works with very advanced cases, chronic disease like atherosclerosis. And that's a disease that when he was training in medical school, he learned is just a life sentence for people. There is no coming back from that. And then we started to read the literature and discovered that, you know what, you can sort of help move the plaque out of the body with the right foods. Yeah. And so it's all about teaching people how they can optimize their health through lifestyle medicine. And so the educator part comes in the sense that when we learned about this information, I decided to first start with his patients at his vascular center. I wanted to let them know that they actually can have power to take control of their health and make these lifestyle changes that in many ways do not cost money, like medication and procedures can.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to spend money on food anyway. You might as well spend it wisely on foods that are good for you, etc.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then we started building, we formed an organization here in the Dallas area and we held pre-pandemic. I feel like that's always, it's now going to be part of people's stories, right? Like
Yeah.
life before the pandemic. But we
Hmm.
used to hold in-person events, educational classes. We partnered with our library and we would hold lectures and panel discussions and we would screen certain films to support our community and also potlucks. And now we're part of another organization called Walk with the Doc, where we walk monthly with our community to encourage them to just adopt a healthier lifestyle.
Okay, that's interesting too. It's almost like the first thing that popped into my head with the walk with the doc thing is like reporters walking with the president. He's out for his jog. It's a photo op, but also they get to ask questions and it as they're walking with him too. So your walk with the doc is like, hey, how about some free advice, right? And literally that's kind of what you're doing with the public education thing. Is literally this is free advice. You're not paying for this, buy my book, etc. But like, share, and subscribe. But the idea is getting the information out there. I don't have a problem. It's a bad way to put it. Like, of course, I don't have a problem, but I like that I can do this for free and show people what I do, the idea that dreams can have some relevance to your personal life. And I don't mind giving it away for free. I hope people buy a book because you got to make a living. But the idea isn't, for me to craft anything specifically for the sake of money. We got to make a living, but I'm not just chasing the dollar bills. It's got to be something genuine and authentic too. And it sounds like this is something you're, truly passionate about, which I think really, of course, it sounds obvious, but really motivates people to do the best job with something. You care and you believe it's meaningful. And so the education becomes the educational process, the doing of it becomes a passionate endeavor.
Yeah. Yes. And I understand what you're saying. I mean, in some ways, this is an outreach program that we do. Most of what we offer is free of charge. It's how we're helping people to not become patients of my husband, for example. By
Yeah.
the time you become his patient, it's your certain conditions are very hard to reverse and take
Yeah.
control of.
Oh yeah.
His patients, his diabetic patients, eventually, not all, but sometimes they can have gangrene, which can then lead to an amputation. And then once you have an amputation, your quality of life drops significantly.
Oh
Your
yeah.
world shrinks because you're not as mobile. And many of the patients suffer from depression as a result of that.
Absolutely.
And so what I like, Ben, about this way of promoting lifestyle to our patients, just in general, is that many of these professionals that adopt these teachings, so they might already be double board certified, they become triple board certified in lifestyle medicine. There are very educated individuals, the physicians. You see on their social media that they're walking with their patients, that they're doing food demos. They're actually in the kitchen teaching their patients how to cook healthy meals. And it removes that white coat element that
Yeah.
people have sometimes when they're, they sometimes feel, patients in the past have said that they feel judged by their physicians for various reasons, whether
Yeah.
they're still smoking or they might have weight issues. And so this is a way to soften the relationship between the health professionals and patients to say, yes, you're a human being. So we all have patterns that we want to change. And not only that, most of the health professionals that adopt this way of living, most of them have their own story
Hmm.
of something that they themselves have overcome, whether it be, struggling with multiple sclerosis or an autoimmune condition,
Hmm.
rheumatoid arthritis. You hear all sorts, pre-diabetic. Many of these people as well have seen significant changes in their own lives. So it kind of helps to soften the relationship. And you're right, when they're walking with us, it's a casual conversation. We do a little bit of a health topic. And we just are like everybody else. We have to work on our own health as well. And so
True.
the
Yeah.
educator part of me is putting together a lot of these events, creating content, whether it's for the podcast or literature for the patients. But in so many ways, I'm constantly working on something behind the scenes to continue to make all of these things happen.
Oh yeah. And this is one of the great things I think about what I do, because there's so many connections between the broad concept of dreams as within psychology and crossover with almost anything you can talk to anyone about. So what do I mean by that? You just mentioned the idea of people's concept of the white-coated doctor. And
Mhm.
that's very much akin to, if not its own type of archetype. And that's a symbol, and it has components to it that it's a category to which we both from which we draw observations of what it does, and that we ascribe personal feelings to or expectations. I think it's very akin, and I think some doctors are wizards in their own way. And it's wizard is almost like, in some ways, it's almost like saying, you're a master of a certain craft, and there's many different kinds. I'm just the happen to be the wizard that specializes in dreams, and I can use that title because it's not a licensed professional title, so that's part of it too. I can't claim to be a psychologist practicing psychology, but I can be a wizard. But so it gets to archetypes, and our archetypes and symbology in general is in dreams. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to do communication with people, and we're taking into account their perception of what they are communicating with. So in some ways, if you think of it like the epic fantasy movie, the wizard being a powerful being commands a certain kind of respect from their power in a way, but also for their knowledge and wisdom and ability to provide useful information. So you want to straddle that line in a lot of ways between, I have enough respect to have you believe I have legitimate competence in this area, but not so much that you're afraid to engage with me as a human being. I'm just a guy with long hair rambling on the internet. I might know some things you don't, but I don't want to be scary, and I don't want you to feel intimidated. Just listen enough to consider what I'm saying might have something useful for you. So I think that's very much what you're talking about, like trying to make doctors demystified in a way that doesn't undermine their credibility, but also doesn't put them on a pedestal that's like,
Yes.
I can't talk to you from up here.
That's exactly the point,
Yeah.
is that we want to shift the narrative that most patients have about their doctors and
Mm.
the doctors not caring. And I want to add one more component to all of that, is that the college trains these professionals to not only, be informed so that they know how to educate their patients, but in helping patients to discover why they want to make these healthy changes.
Mm-hmm.
So discovering their why, and also teaching them sustainability. So how to make gradual changes, not overnight, but gradual changes that can stick around for a long time. And so in many ways, then the physician, and I say physician, but I'm talking about really health professionals. They could be a registered dietitian, a nurse practitioner, physician assistant, but they are then trained to not become almost like a coach. So, and a coach is a cheerleader in many ways to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned what your why is, what you're struggling with, what you want to change in your life. And then I'm there to kind of handhold a little bit and support you so that you can be your best version of yourself. Because most of us want to be healthier. It's just we're so used to our routine. All of us have a routine and a lifestyle. And so we learn about how to make those gradual changes. Like I said, the goal is to really have changes that will stick around, and also improve our quality of life, so that if we're going to live to be 80 or 90 years old, we want to still thrive at that age.
Yeah, you certainly want to be able to get around so you don't end up like the amputated, diabetic, depressed, isolated, that kind of thing. Yeah, if there's any way
Yeah.
to, that's part of how I conceive, say wizardry, is that it's a bit of a crystal ball. It's like saying, look, if you keep going this way, what is it? Tracy Morgan, comedian, he has a great thing where he's talking about the different ways people conceive of diabetes. It's nested within another joke, but he said something like, it's a friend telling another friend, you're going to lose that foot. You don't want that foot. You keep eating that sugar. And yeah, that's a very wizardly thing to say, is look, if you maintain this pattern, here's what you're going to get. I'm not telling you should want anything specific, but knowing this is literally cause and effect, this is the result you will obtain. I've done my part in terms of saying, I hope that's useful information to you. And then personally, we feel, there's like the professional, I will give you precise, useful information. Personal level, I'm doing this because maybe I don't want to see you end up like that. It's your choice, but
Yeah.
ideally, maybe not. So,
Yes, yes. And also, you talked a little bit about, like the products that you have available. And I kind of want to reiterate in terms, for your listeners, that
yeah.
I feel that I always have to explain it to other people that don't know the life of a podcaster, but this is a full-time job. And for those of us that are sort of self-employed or think of ourselves like an entrepreneur, we work more than the average 40, 60-hour week. I
Yeah.
mean, we are highly invested in crafting these shows and these episodes. And so whatever comes as a result of that, whatever product can support your show is very beneficial. It's what helps keep the show going because
Oh,
you
yeah.
have all the other expenses behind what you do, all the costs to host and to produce the episodes and all of that. So,
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And it's one of those things where it's like, you got to make a living somehow. And every minute you got to
yeah.
devote to some other day job that pays the bills, you're not doing what you love. And you're also not providing, hopefully, what your passion is provides to other people. Yeah. So, I
Yeah.
mean, in that regard, let's say if currently have, whatever, 1,300 YouTube subscribers, if everyone went over to my BenjaminTheDreamWizard.locals.com and signed up for $1, that would be, $1,000 a month. And I could really actually not have to have my weekend gig, which is something else. In terms of this stuff, I do literally, I think, work about 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I'd like to cut that back a little bit by not having to work on the weekends as soon as this starts paying. So I got books and I got hopefully, aiming for monetization. These are all a little behind the scenes things, but it's their practicalities. You got to pay the bills or you just can't keep doing what you're doing. Nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, nothing wrong with making a buck.
Yep.
It's, we all got to live and eat. Yeah, but that's one of the reasons I got into doing the books is because I want to give some. Not only do I want eventually a commercial or two, YouTube monetization, but eventually what I want to do is provide something of tangible benefit. They can hold it in their hand. Here's a work of historical literature on the subject of dreams by very smart people from the past. And now you've got that in your hand forever. I get a couple of bucks. We're both happy. It's real tangible
Yes.
value is what I'm trying to do there. So
Yes.
I would definitely, rather than just donations, which are great, I'll take them, please. But also I want to give you a valuable product I put my heart into in that way. So I think it's very necessary. Well, speaking of your podcast and YouTube stuff, we should talk about that a little bit. I don't know if there's, you want to start somewhere first?
In terms of the podcast itself,
Yeah, like
or
describing it and guests you've had on, topics
yeah,
you've covered. What do you do on the YouTube channel? Is general.
sure. So I mentioned that I originally started really trying to educate my husband's patients, and then that quickly moved into local events. And then it dawned on me that a podcast would even be better in the sense that for patients that are not mobile, it would be easier for them just to tune in to the podcast without leaving their home.
Yeah.
So, like I said, these are advanced cases that we were looking at when we were speaking to my husband's patients. So, sometimes they have to have a service that will drop them off at the hospital or at the clinic. And so I really started locally here in the Dallas area, highlighting some of the game changers, people in my city that are doing great things to support the community. And then I was doing everything on Zoom before moving on to the platform that I currently use now. So when the pandemic hit, I just went full force because everything shut down. So we had to cancel all our events. We had a retreat that was scheduled. Like a lot of people, everything got canceled. And what I found was that anxiety that I started to develop from feeling like I could no longer support people locally, I just put it all in my podcast. I started to invite people from all over the world. So I guess from Australia and from the UK and South Africa, and all over. I started just bringing on people to talk about various things. And that's sort of like when my podcast began to shift, not only talking about nutrition, but then covering topics like mental health, because that's part of the whole overall health and wellness field.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so that health disparities. And my husband is one of those individuals that was very clear about that being true. And so we've had these discussions of how can we help other people because they might not have access to grocery stores, for example. If they don't have a vehicle and they don't have a grocery store they can walk to, how are they expected to eat healthier? And the stress of living in unsafe neighborhoods as well. I mean, there's just so much,
Big
so
deal.
many components that can affect our lives. And so, yeah, the podcast has become that. I went from having one episode a week. Last year, I went to two. So it's I produced so much content last year. I think it was about 105 episodes last year.
Wow, nice.
Uh, yeah, so Tuesdays I have a guest. It's usually always a health expert, trained in lifestyle medicine, like I said. So I focus on some component, whether it's stress management or exercise or food. And then on Thursdays, I offer a health tip, a very short to the point tip for people that may not want to listen to a whole interview.
Hmm.
And then starting next Monday, I'm adding a third episode to my show.
Oh, geez.
It's I know, and you know, as a podcaster, you can understand what that means. It's a lot of work.
It
But
is. Yeah.
I'm bringing my husband back on the show. He was my co-host when we first started, but his job has always kept him very busy, and so
Yeah.
he can't consistently be on the show with me. So he's coming on Mondays to do just short segments, and that's under one segment. Would I say a segment? But I'm calling it Doctor in the Office. And
Oh,
so,
yeah.
yeah,
Nice.
he's coming back on the show to answer those concerns that people have about making changes, to answer any questions or, be sort of like a health expert on the show that can just be very short and precise, again, for people that might only want to hear directly from the doctor. And so my listeners help me last year to rebrand my podcast. I got my audience very involved. And then this year I got them involved again. And I said, the doctor's coming back on. Help me to choose the name for that segment, for that series of episodes. And that's also exciting, Ben, to get people involved
Oh,
because
yeah.
they're invested in many ways. So I've gotten a lot of positive feedback. People can't wait for the episode, the first one to happen next Monday. I think that's the 13th. And that's pretty much where I'm at today. I think in April, I will be celebrating 300 episodes. And
Wow. Nice.
yeah, I don't use Discord and I'll talk about YouTube in a little bit, but I've been wanting to maybe do a live on YouTube where I can connect with my listeners, with my
Yeah.
husband and my dog and just kind of show who we are. I try to do that on social media. I try to show people just we're average people. My neighbor moved out the other day and she said, "Oh my God, I didn't know that your husband was a vascular surgeon and I didn't know you had a podcast." She said it all just showed up right. She's like, "My neighbors are so cool. They're so cool." And I said, "Well, yeah, we're average people here in our neighborhood. We don't promote a lot of stuff because we just want to relax."
Yeah.
Yeah. Moving on to the YouTube, I can't remember when I started that, maybe 2016 or 2017.
Good long time. Yeah.
And yeah, but it took me a long time to get monetized too. So
It does. What do they say? It takes 10 years to become an overnight success.
yeah, I mean, I don't know how, and there are other ways to get more people to come to your channel if you're have certain topics or if you're controversial or anything like that. But for me, it's always been that I have to stay true to my values. That's
Yeah.
really important for me. But what I've offered is segments, just short segments of my video interviews, the video portion of it. And I've done cooking shows. I've done like live shows where I'm on streaming from one of the streaming services, and then I'll have a guest on the other end. We're both in the kitchen. We decide to cook the same recipe, but then our viewers get to see we're side by side on the screen, so viewers can see how we're preparing the same meal, and we have conversations and we get to know each other. And so
Very
I
nice.
love being in the kitchen. So that's kind of what you'll find on the YouTube channel.
Very cool. And so just so you know, I mean, you can see both of us side by side in the Discord. And I want to come back to that too. And that's actually how the display is for the entire thing. I'm on the screen, you're on the screen for my episodes because I think it's more interesting that way. And it's a lot less work to not be editing camera views to focus on people. But different software does that. So that's one thing I wanted to ask you is like I'm using, or to not ask, but talk about in general, I'm using Streamlabs because it's what I first became familiar with. I use Discord because I was already familiar with it. I'm able to capture audio and video from Discord, my microphone, and get it up on the screen, and taught myself all of these things. I used to use Zoom if people wanted to. I would try to meet people where they Google Meets, Zoom, whatever they were familiar with. And then Zoom went to, no, everyone has a 40-minute hard limit, even if you're just talking to one person. I'm like, well, I'm out. What am I supposed to do with that? I can't stop and start interviews all the time.
Right.
So I was just going to ask in general, behind the scenes podcaster to podcaster, what's recording software you use, and and then come back around after that to the idea of live streams. But go ahead with that first.
Okay. So along with what you said in terms of Zoom, that's initially how I started. Very difficult to edit because I think you get 2 audio files. But for many years, I've been podcasting over 4 years. I started in 2018, and so I'm going on 5 years. And I've, for the most part, have always recorded video. And I know that a lot of podcasters are moving towards video, but for me, video has always been there. And I found it very difficult to edit video and to really highlight my guests using Zoom. It's just a very limiting software. And then I went to one of the conferences for podcasters, and I met the creators. I think initially when they first launched, it was very early on, I met Riverside.fm, which you're probably familiar with.
I've heard of it, but no experience yet. Yeah. And then there's StreamYards, and there's like a half a dozen of them that I don't know if any of them are better. I mean, I have experience in one, and I know it takes me a long time to learn anything. So if I change, it's going to be a whole thing. So
I was about to say the same thing. I'm a creature of habit. I like, if I find something that works, I try not to change that.
If it ain't broke,
working for me. Yeah. And so Riverside allows you it records locally. So when my guest is on, their video is being recorded temporarily to their computer. And then it's uploading, depending on their internet speed, it's uploading as we're having a conversation. So by the time we finish recording, both of our videos go to the cloud, and then the files come to me. And so the quality of the video is so much better than Zoom.
Gotcha.
And so you have Riverside.fm is designed for individuals who want quality video and quality audio.
Gotcha.
The other thing that I like about them is that if you want to generate content for example, for your IG Reels, you can actually export a nice file where for your IG Reels or stories where you're one on top of the other in terms of video, your guest and yourself.
Got some great
and then you
functionality,
just take a show. Yeah, you take a short 60-second clip or 59-second clip from there, add your captions using, your IG tools there, and boom, you have a reel. And then I take that and I upload it to my YouTube. And I mean, it's just, I love it. I've heard of other platforms that are very similar. But they've improved the platform so much that ever since I've started using it, I've just been happier and happier because they actually listen to their users and take their advice. And so it just continues to evolve. And I'm happy with that.
Very cool. Yeah. And probably if I put in the effort to understand some things, but if I did the research, which I don't know, I could get around to it. I might find that some other methods are easier. Like I've got multiple different programs I use. I've got the Streamlabs, and also what I'm working with is kind of using free tools for the moment. I don't pay for any of this. All of this stuff is free, downloaded software. I haven't got into like Streamlabs. You can do a subscription, which will allow you to live broadcast to multiple platforms. Right now it's one platform at a time, and then you have to upload to others if you want to. Well, I'd love to be, and this is the thing I was going to get back to doing live streams. I do the recorded content, I do dream interviews, and then every now and again, my own blurbs, whatever they are. I cut out clips from the show. I try to do YouTube short style stuff that I, try to put on, say, TikTok and whatnot. I was going somewhere with that. And so I use multiple different, hi, what are you doing, boo-boo? I got a fidgety dog. Multiple different things. It might be better to say streamline it and use a single thing. I was going somewhere else with that. Oh, the live stream thing. Oh yeah. Paying for a service and broadcasting. Yes. So I do video game streams too, where I'm just hanging out. Come and talk to me. I'm just a guy on the internet playing video games, and talking to people about their dreams. I want to be that approachable, and the live thing is great too. To get the interaction, and it's also content that adds to your viewed hours and hopefully eventually monetization and whatnot.
I think that if maybe this will help refresh what you were thinking, but I think that if you're savvy, if you're tech savvy and can figure things out fast, then there are so many options. Okay, I'm self-taught, so I've taught myself everything, and I study a lot of YouTubers. I'm on YouTube all the time. That's my husband and I we both get our information from YouTube in many different ways. So
I don't even watch like cable TV anymore. Haven't for years. It's all it's all online streaming services
Someone
or yeah,
asked me, yeah, someone asked me the other day, do you watch the news? And I say, I go to YouTube. And it gets me to the point. If something happened in Dallas, I got a short little clip
for sure.
information about it. That's all I need. I don't need to watch continuous news. But yes, I learn a lot. So for individuals who need something that it's easier and they don't have time to figure it out, for example, then something like Riverside is pretty easy. But even then, you to use Riverside, the users, that includes the guest, has to have Chrome. You have to use it on
Oh,
Chrome.
gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
And and so for some people, I have yet to have someone that wants to give up on me because of that. But usually they'll say, I've had two people tell me, I didn't realize I needed Chrome, and so the interview starts a little bit late. But other than that, I haven't had any complaints.
Good news, a web browser is really easy to install. Like, go get
Right.
Chrome browser, and it takes you straight there, especially if you Google it.
Yeah. But again, we're going back to, two things. People feeling comfortable with technology. And the other is that most of my people are health experts. So they're busy, in the clinic
Yeah,
doing their work. And so they might not have as much time. And sometimes they call in from their office or somewhere in the hospital. And so that can become a little bit tricky too, because
for
as you
sure.
know, then you have a lot of echo. You don't have a quality mic. The lighting may be bad, but I'm forgiving of those things
Oh,
because
for
our health
sure. Yeah.
experts just don't have the time to
You just meet
become.
people where they're at. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
not going to give you a hard time about bad audio. It is what it is. I screwed up the audio myself I think Streamlabs had an update and a channel got duplicated accidentally and I didn't realize it. And all my audio was jacked. And I'm like, what did I do? I pushed a button. No, it was something. And I turned off. That was telling you this off the air. But speaking of also behind the scenes, oh no, I lost it. Behind the scenes, recording software. Oh, well,
We were going to talk about streaming, but
yeah.
you don't pay for any services, I think
Yeah,
is
I
what
mean,
you're
I'd like
saying.
to, but it's one of those things where it's a weird thing. It's almost like I don't know if they call it the Peter Principle or something like that. Like to those who have everything, more will be given. To those who have nothing, everything will be taken. There's something in there of like the more resources you invest into something, the more successful you can be. So if I had the money, I could get the multi-streaming output paid service, which would allow me to make more money in that regard. But first, I got to start making the money to otherwise
Yeah,
I
I
mean, I
get
could
it.
probably do it. If it's like $20 a month, maybe I should just do it. That's a little bit of chump change to get a better exposure. But that
Yeah.
is a behind the scenes thing where I'm like, I'm not breaking even yet on this gig. And I accept that. And it takes as long as that's why I got a day job on the weekends, that kind of thing.
Ben, I understand. I said to my husband not long ago, I said, what I'd like to focus on is just having the interview experience and then someone else taking over everything else. It is so much work to have to edit and do your show notes and still
Yeah,
promote your podcast. And that comes, all of that, a team comes when you can actually pay them. And how do you pay your team to help you with the work? So yeah, you kind of have to work towards getting monetized so that you can hand over some of these jobs to someone else.
for sure. And then there's for me, like well, there's two things there. One is, and this harkens back to something you're saying earlier, the idea of producing content. So in one sense, this is the ideal level of effort for me. And we talked about this beforehand. You were saying, so you just like click record and then post it, like basically, unless someone tells me not to, which is part of the ethical concerns I bring to everything. So this is very easy relatively. I have kind of an intro and outro music and graphic I put up just to make it more of a show. Didn't used to do that. Now I do. The professional quality improving. But really it's all one take and both of us are on the screen and I've kind of dialed it into a very minimal thing. That said, there is some editing to do. Sometimes we take a break. Sometimes I cut things out because they're too personal. They're like, I don't always mention this in every episode, but if you talk to me, you get my, now my head's going. I wanted to say things about like more behind the scene process of, I've had some folks show up and they're very busy. Like you were talking about the doctors and they're used to 45 minutes. We'll get the interview done and you'll cut it down to 15. I'm like, no, this is 2.5, 4.5 hours. I mean, some people don't understand the likelihood of a analysis requiring lengthy conversation, and there's nothing wrong with them. They're used to a different style of interview. I'm like, this is a whole dream interpretation. Usually clinically, these things take place over multiple hour-long sessions for weeks. And I'm kind of, even I'm condensing it to say 4.5 hours. That's fast for a really good in-depth answer. So there's a bit of that, too. So I want people to know out there, like my process, I ask people to set aside a couple hours so we can talk before. I don't record until we agree that you understand the process and you get what's going here. And then I, announce we're starting a recording, and I only release it with permission. So all these things take some time. So a couple hours. I like to let people know what to expect if they reach out to me is, hopefully you don't feel rushed. I don't want you to feel rushed. I'm in it for the marathon. And, but also as I've given some recent examples, I'll try to tighten it up if I can. I will definitely approach it differently, which I think is fun too in some ways of like, well, you give me a different slice of challenge. Like, give me an answer in 45 minutes. Okay, that's a specific type of thing. I'll try. And then we do the best we can. But so I like that too, those challenging experiences. I'm rambling again. Go ahead.
Yes. So, what am I going ahead about?
Oh, I don't know. Just if you had any thoughts. But I didn't really ask you a question. I'm a terrible interviewer. So, I'm not actually an interviewer at all.
You know what's so funny, Ben, is that I edit my content, and I'm a talker. I talk a lot. And in the process of editing, I find myself removing, only because my goal is always to keep things under an hour.
Sure.
And my goal is also not to talk. This is me though, not to talk more than my health expert, right? So a lot of times I cue them up. I have a question, but then I go on and on about my health or my family or something related to that. And then I ask the question. And so sometimes I go back and I say, oh, I shouldn't have said that. And I remove myself. But other than that, my goal is always to kind of help my health expert, because my health experts are not always necessarily used to being on podcasts. I pull them from the American College of Lifestyle Medicine because I see they're valuable, and I study them, right? That's how I know who I would like. I either meet them in one of the interest groups that I'm part of for that college, or I hear them speak somewhere and I say they would be a perfect guest for the show. And then I focus on that. But when I'm interviewing, as I'm getting to know them, because I'm excited about the conversation, sometimes I do also ramble. I do talk. But it's because it might be the first conversation we've ever had. And usually there's some admiration behind that too, and a little bit of excitement. So it's okay.
For sure. Yeah. No, and that's, I would hope part of my charm is I'm just this fumbly, bumbly, rambly type of guy who doesn't mean any harm. And hopefully occasionally says something you go, wow, that was pretty cool. I hope I have something interesting to say. But I find myself doing that all the time. Talking over my guests sometimes, talking too much, not actually asking them questions. If I catch myself, there's a weird dichotomy I got to pull here where I don't want to think about recording. I'm talking to a person. We're doing a thing. That's what we're doing here. We're doing the thing. It happens to be recording. Every now and again, I got to realize there's another person here. I need to make sure this is about them. I need to ask them questions. I'm doing it right now. I'm talking about me and not asking you questions. So if I realize that, but I also try to give those like personal connections, because let me tell you, I know exactly what you mean. Here's my experience of exactly what you just described. I think I hope it makes for good content,
Yeah, because at the end of the day, this is how a conversation would happen anyway. Like if we met in person.
Yeah.
So because I also do listen to a lot of podcasts. Like I consume a lot of content because that's what I enjoy. So I listen to many podcasts, and some of the best podcasts don't do heavy editing. They just allow themselves and their guests to just relax into the conversation. And so I'm trying to learn from that. I'm trying to learn that it doesn't have to be perfect. I can relax and it's okay. The only time what I'm starting to do is if I tell my guests ahead of time that if they kind of get their words mixed up and need to start over, I will go ahead and edit that. So I say pause and just start over. Don't worry about it. And the other thing that I do, Ben, because again, a lot of my guests are not trained in, being guests. After a while, I realized I needed an onboarding video. So I made an onboarding video, again, introducing myself to my guests. So I just kind of tell them who I am, a little bit of history of the podcast, why it's important that they be on my show. And it's a general video, but I always say, if you're invited, that's because I see value in you. And then I give them a few tips about, sound and being in a quiet space and having adequate light and all of that. And I feel it's about a 30-minute video. That's probably longer, but everybody watches it.
Yeah,
Almost everybody. It's like, I took your cues. And so they come on the show feeling a little bit more comfortable
for sure.
and relaxed about it. And that's really helped to improve a lot of the back and forth of explaining the process. Because I also explain, uh, what they can expect, how long it takes me to release an episode. So I cover a lot of that in the
Yeah.
video instead of going back and forth in email.
That's what I try and do with everyone. Before you heard my spiel, I kind of give everyone the same speech. Here's my ethical boundaries. Here's, yada, yada. And especially the idea of cutting things out, so I say this, every guest hears it, but so I like to show again, behind the scenes, it's everything I do is transparent. That's genuine, transparent, all that good stuff. So I tell folks, if we get into something that is too personal and you don't want it on the air, cut it out. Because it isn't about, like I said, this, as I tell folks, this is not the Jerry Springer show. We're not looking to embarrass anyone or have salacious content that is, shock value. You won't believe what this, political opponents owned, that kind of thing. It's not my show, right? It's a real, human connection to, so if there's something that's too personal, like I had a person just once who said that portion where I talked about a dream symbol that relates to a family member, please cut that out. And I did, but it was relevant to getting the next connecting link. So we just left that out and the story still made sense without that 30 seconds of explanation. And I do that for everybody. That's the only editing I really do. Otherwise, it is freewheeling. We just talk about whatever. We fumble our words and we go back and say it twice, or I ramble like an idiot, It's like, And I think it's, like I said, I hope it's charming and fun and genuine. And people will say, these are really just two real people having a chat about whatever, nothing, anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're great. I think, like I said to you before we started recording, that this is a little bit out of my element or my comfort zone, right? I'm curious, I'm excited, but it's a little bit out of my comfort zone. And yet you brought me to the point where I'm relaxed now. I feel more relaxed. And so that really helps a lot. That means that you're doing something right.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah. And again, more behind the scenes, as I say to everyone, and this is for an explicit purpose. I have my extremely strong ethical boundaries. I'm not practicing psychology in a clinical license sense, but I do everything that kind of person does in that clinical setting under those strict rules. And that's for two reasons. It's just the right thing to do. And damn it, that's what I'm going to do. The other side of it is that's the best possible process. As I said, if people are inhibited, they don't give good responses, we don't get a good answer, my process fails. Like, why do this at all if we're not going to get a good result based on the right way to do it? So I'm trying to meet those ethical standards from a moral and a practical element. And yeah, people should feel comfortable and know that they can trust the process and that I'm not going to exploit them. That's just like the worst thing ever in my mind is, someone who feels like they were taken advantage of. Like, God, that's not what I'm trying to do in any way. And I'm glad that comes across. I appreciate that. Well, speaking of which, I mean, we're, almost 45 minutes in. Do you want to start the dream thing? Speaking of which, Benjamin the Dream Wizard wants to help you pierce the veil of night and shine the light of understanding upon the mystery of dreams. Every episode of his Dreamscapes program features real dreamers gifted with rare insight into their nocturnal visions. New Dreamscapes episodes appear every week on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and other video hosting platforms, as well as free audiobooks highlighting the psychological principles which inform our dream experience and much, much more. To join the wizard as a guest, reach out across more than a dozen social media platforms and through the contact page at benjaminthedreamwizard.com, where you will also find the wizard's growing catalog of historical dream literature available on Amazon, featuring the wisdom and wonder of exploration into the world of dreams over the past 2,000 years. That's Benjamin the Dream Wizard on YouTube and at benjaminthedreamwizard.com.
Yes. Okay. So I said to you before we connected early on that when you asked me about, that I actually have to have a dream, not a goal dream, but an actual dream. I said to you that I actually I don't know if it's called lucid dreaming. I don't know what it's called, but I dream often. I have profound experiences in my dreams, and I always have like these recurring dreams, but I said I have two of them that the scene changes, but it's always like the same theme. And then, so I was going to tackle one of those today. And then last night I had another dream, a new one.
Hmm.
And I said to you, I think maybe that's the one I'm going to talk about today,
Yeah.
which I might explain it very quickly because uh, it's more like the feeling that it left me like all day. It's kind of lingered. But okay, I'll explain it. Are you ready?
Yep. I'm just going to listen, beginning to end, like a
Okay.
story. Ready when you are.
Okay. So my husband and I were on a cruise, and it's kind of to the point, the dream, but we were on a cruise and I was standing in line, sort of there were a lot of people, almost like a crowd, but I could see that maybe there were two lines. And the line to my left, like I said, lots of people. I could see one individual, couldn't make out who the individual was, whether the gender of the person or anything like that, but I can tell that someone was distraught. So I started to kind of make my way through the crowd until I found that individual. And it was a man, a little taller than myself, a little heavier. Um, I guess if I wanted to give him a raise or something, he might have been Caucasian. I don't know. But I know he had dark hair. And he was experiencing what I sense was an oncoming, let me see, how would I say it? He was about to have a heart attack. It seemed like he was about to have a heart attack. And I noticed him first before the crowd did. So I was the one that kind of was yelling for help, asking, saying something is happening here. And because we were in the midst of like a large setting, no one really was paying attention. And so I said, I'm going to get my husband. He's the doctor. And at first I thought, well, surely there must be other doctors here. Why am I calling for my husband? But probably because I knew in that moment that if I yelled for him to come and render aid to someone that is experiencing some sort of heart attack, that he would quickly come. And I don't remember the details of him actually coming to render aid. I remember the individual, we got him down to the floor, kind of lying down, and I was trying to help by pumping his chest. And almost immediately, it's almost like I could see him morphing into, I don't know, it seemed like morphing into death. I don't know how else to explain it, but he went from looking like a regular individual to I could see, like him without skin, like the veins and the bones and everything, like death. And he died. And then I looked up to my left, and again, the scene kind of changed a little bit, so I don't understand it, but I saw what looked like open coffins. Um, that's the only way that I can explain it, but rather than the coffin being open from the top, I was looking at it from the side, so I could see the individual like in boxes, two individuals that were already dead. And one I can make out was a woman, and then I could see a part of the other body, but I couldn't tell what it was. And again, they had the same kind of look of kind of like when you've seen that display of the human body and you can see the body without the skin. I forgot what that display was. They went around in museums. And you can see muscles and other material. That's what I saw in those two bodies as well. I don't remember much. I think I do remember my husband being there. And then I had this sense of helplessness that there wasn't anything that I could do to save that person. And even though I didn't know the individual, it hurt and it impacted me. And there might be more, but that's all I remember.
Hey, that's fantastic. Lots of great imagery and a sequence of events is really all you need. Then I got to catch up with my notes, write as fast as I can. Ooh, crap, right?
I will say, as you're writing, I told you earlier, so I have a little dog. I took him out for a walk, and
Yeah.
that came up. Like I'm thinking about the dream. And I dream a lot. If I take melatonin, which I rarely do, but every blue moon I take a melatonin a little bit, and I'll dream even more. And many times at
Yeah.
night I say to myself, please don't let me dream tonight. I want to go to sleep. I just want to sleep, because it's almost like in some of my dreams I feel like I go to another dimension, and it feels very, very real.
Yeah.
And it's always been like that for me. So I do believe that our dreams can have really strong messages for us. So when I have a dream and I'm walking around, I'm trying to process it. I don't try to analyze it. I try to process how it makes me feel. And
Yeah.
even as I'm talking, I have this pain in my gut, just, reliving that dream
Yeah.
or thinking about it.
Yeah. Because those emotions are very real. I mean, dreams aren't, they are as real as our imagination. And we can imagine being sad at not being able to help someone stay alive. That being in
Yeah.
exactly that situation your brain imagined, the feeling is very real. I mean, it can carry on. So there's a couple of things I was going to say about um it's very frequent that dreams self-select for importance in that way. It's like, if you remember it, there's probably something in there that piqued your interest enough to make it memorable. And not only that, but if there's a layer of intensity to it, an emotional content that sticks with you throughout the day, that's another layer of meaning. That's like, not only is this an interesting idea that seemed relevant to something in my life, but this is actually touching something very close to what I feel is important in life, meaningful in general. So yeah, those are really the ones that you would want to understand if possible. There were three things. I'm trying to remember them all. The second one was, as we talked beforehand, I've noticed over, this will be episode 119, over the course of doing this for the last couple of years, a lot of people have said, hey, I got a dream for you. And then by the time they show up for the interview, they're like, wait a minute, I had one last night. Let's do that one instead. That one seems very important. And I think sometimes or maybe always, it's related to the idea that we are going to sleep with somewhere in our mind the knowledge that I will be speaking to the dream guy tomorrow. And lo and behold, we have some kind of meaningful dream, because it's like our brain says, how do I make the most of this opportunity I'm going to have tomorrow? Let me think about something important to share. And we do. It's almost like dream programming in a way. You didn't tell yourself what to dream about, but you open the door to show me something meaningful, worth discussing, in my opinion, personally, Okay, that was two. Sorry, I got to get them all there. They're gonna disappear. And all the way back to the very beginning, you said you weren't sure about the terminology, lucid dreaming, and you described it as, or maybe I wrote down vivid. There are people who have very vague, and it's a funny thing to say, dreamlike dreams, but it's like hazy, and nothing's very clear, and there's some impressions. And then there's people who are like, it was like I was walking down my own street. I saw the cracks in the sidewalk. I saw every leaf on the tree. Intense, vivid visual and sensory experience. And there are a bunch of different, people tend to have, well, what am I trying to say about this? If you are someone who has vivid dreams, that tends to be the way you dream. That tends to be your dream experience pretty consistently across your lifetime. Lucid dreaming is more, I have an awareness, I am asleep, and this is a dream. Therefore, I can direct it like I'm making a movie. And that's, I'm in some, speaking of discords, in another discord of lucid dreamers, and they love the experience. Like, I can fly, I can transmute objects. I'm a wizard. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And so but that is a very different experience. That opens the door to the question, are they really conscious and directing their dreams, or are they having the dream experience that they believe they're conscious and directing their dreams? Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. I don't know. If they enjoy it, it's all
Yeah.
good. But
Well, I early on, many years ago, that was my experience in terms of lucid dreaming.
yeah,
Like you said, in many ways, I was aware that I was dreaming, or at least I was under the impression that I'm aware that I'm dreaming.
right.
But
It's hard to
I could
tell.
change things. So when I was younger, when something scared me, I knew how to stop it, how to
Nice.
minimize it and take control. I would stick my hand out and I would say no. to whatever was scaring me. Usually it's something that I always would call like a dark energy or something demonic. Those are the
Yeah.
things that scare me. Other people have different types of fears, but so I felt like I had more control over my dreams so that I could get the results that I wanted. And then it's become more vivid in the sense that I don't know that I'm dreaming. In many ways, it feels like I'm just in another dimension. And when I come back, when I wake up, I feel like I just shifted to another reality or came back to
Yeah.
this reality. Like I shifted. I don't feel like I woke up. It's like I just came back to another reality. And so because of I go through that, I many times don't want to dream. I just want to go to
Yeah.
sleep. That's all.
That was kind of the fourth element of it
So
is you even sometimes experience dreams so intense that it's like exhausting when you wake up like, God, can
yes.
I just like dream I'm unconscious and sleeping?
Yeah. I even had so the paralysis that we experience during
Wow.
our sleep,
Yeah.
I've had those awarenesses that something is scaring me. I cannot move because I'm paralyzed, right? Like in the middle of I'm just heavily dreaming and I can't move. And so I'll tell myself to wake up, wake up, wake up. And then I sometimes do wake up. And I realized, oh, I was stuck in something that was scaring me and I couldn't move, but now I'm awake.
Oh yeah. And there's so many fantastic layers to all this stuff. I mean, going back anthropologically over millennia, I mean, probably before mankind was mankind as such, we had an awareness that we closed our eyes and went somewhere else for a while. And there's been a tremendous amount of spiritual, supernatural, religious theories around that. And we get the end result of the Buddhist philosopher that said, am I a man dreaming I'm a butterfly or a butterfly dreaming I'm a man? And how would I tell the difference? I love
I
that
love
conception.
that.
The only thing, there's a weird thing is like, what is our self? What is our awareness that we are the same person from day to day? And it is a continuity of memory and experience.
Hmm.
So it, there's also the idea of, what am I trying to say? The world exists independent of our perception. And then we have perceptions, and those get processed by the brain. And there's a phenomenon that happens with, say, schizophrenia. There's the auditory processing center of the brain, and that's where you speak, electrical signal from my eardrum into that center, and oh, I translate it to words. I hear your voice. That center in schizophrenic folks lights up on its own. So when a person with schizophrenia says, I hear voices, you put them in a functional MRI and they're like, yep, they're talking to me right now. And you see that auditory processing center light up like someone's talking to them. Now, there's no reason to believe that is an external supernatural force, but it is something about the human experience where their brain is experiencing the phenomenon of a voice. So they're not lying. They're not making it up. They're not imagining it. Now that happens in our dreams, which is weird. We have these hallucinatory, schizophrenic-like experiences where none of this is happening physically, but it's being
Hmm.
processed through the centers that receive external physical information. So there is no way to tell the difference. It's really that powerful,
Yep.
especially when you're in the
That's a great
middle of it.
That's a great way to put it. This kind of schizophrenic experience that it's not
Yeah.
really happening, but that's a great way to describe it because many times, like I'll share with my husband because he's the closest person to me after I've had a dream, and then he'll tell me he doesn't remember. Actually, he tells me that he doesn't dream, which I find hard to believe. Maybe he doesn't recall them, right? But
Yes.
anyway.
No, that's exactly me. I have such vague, like in my 46 now, in my life, I have like 5 dreams I can actually remember and tell you as a story. I am absolutely certain I dreamed last night. No memory of it. Just it fades so quickly. That's a very common experience too. I get a lot of folks,
Mhm.
through the pod match thing where they're like, sorry, I just don't remember my dreams. But no stress. Tell your friends or family. Sometimes, but in my estimation, in my growing theoretical perspective that I'm going to put in a book someday, I believe what we experience in dreams is closer to our actual thought process. But what we've got
Mhm.
when you and I are alive and awake and communicating is filtering our symbolic, associative, sensational thought process through our conscious awareness in a way that translates it into words and makes sense of it as an object we're looking at ourselves, our own thought process. But when we're asleep, that conscious attention is gone and we're just getting the raw feed of our associative connected thoughts and images and whatnot. And so in my estimation, the dream experience is closer to actually how we think even when we're awake. So I think in my estimation, that thought process never stops. The heart beats, the lungs breathe, the brain processes information, even when we're unconscious, and we are more or less aware of it based on how close it is to our conscious attention. That's kind of like there's dreams that are happening down here where you can't see or hear or feel anything, but you're in it and it's happening. And then there's what we call dreams, which is those things that are close enough for us to see it and go, oh, that's a thing. And then we carry that with us into the rest of our conscious attention. So there's some people who think what we call dreams only happens just as we're waking up, like right in that twilight area. I said a lot there, but I hope it validates your experience. Oh, and what your husband said about I'm sure he doesn't remember his dreams. I think he dreams every night like everybody else, constantly.
Yep. It's interesting, but I do agree with what you're saying in terms of what probably our thought process on a regular basis transfers over to our dreams. I've done a lot of inner work in terms of therapy, and now I have a life coach that I've been working with for a couple of years. So I've toned it down a little bit in terms of my emotions, but I'm a person that feels things profoundly, and I do consider myself an empath, and so other people's pain can affect me as well. But I've done a good job of working towards protecting my energy and setting those boundaries where I remind myself that's that person's experience, and this is my reality. But in the past, I have that's one reason why I control what I watch in terms of the news, but also television. So I'm the person that I cannot watch violence against children or any sort of violence because once it's in my mind, it never goes away.
It's true. And there's theories that say, everything we have ever experienced is literally hard coded into our head, whether we can access it or not, remember it or not. It's a physical manifestation in neuronal connections, so it's very wise to say be selective with what you put in your head, because it's if it's not going to serve a useful purpose, not going to make you even feel good, why do it? Like I won't watch what I call torture porn movies like Hostel. Not going to do it. Now I'll watch Saw, which is different. It has an element of that, but there was like a mystery to solve and a clever thing happening there, and there was the horror element to it. It's a weird thing. I enjoy the horror genre, but not certain pointless ones. Like tell me a story, show me something interesting, analyze a philosophical concept in the broader story, then I can contextualize it. But if it's just who wants to watch people just being tortured for no reason? That's just awful. I will not put it in my head. Yeah.
And I think also the people that can watch like the scary films and horror, like you said, are probably people that won't transfer that over to dreams. So like it's for you, it's like it's entertainment, you enjoy it. There's a mystery behind all of that, whatever it may be, but you don't internalize it.
Yes.
I do. I internalize everything. And then I'm the character in my dream experiencing the horror.
Yeah.
Like I'm the person in the movie.
Suffer, which is just awful. And you're helpless to stop it. It's like, I get angry sometimes with certain things like that, especially, children being harmed. I want to do things I can't say on YouTube because those situations make me very angry. And, and that's even me being, so I've got the legit autism thing. My emotional resonance with people is extremely low, and it may not look like it. Mostly I'm engaging intellectually with you. I can understand emotions, and I do experience some. I get happy and sad, and I don't want anyone to be hurting. It affects, but it doesn't touch me in the same way that people who, it's almost like tuning forks. I'm at the wrong frequency and you're at the right frequency to really resonate, and like, this is intense. For me, I'm like, I can feel it. I know what that feels like. That's a thing, but it's very, not too bad. But you got to know yourself and put up those, as you were saying, healthy boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
There you go. Once again, rambling. I love it. We got off on this whole tangent of, and this is,
no, this is good.
No, it is very good. And like I
It
said,
is.
that's the whole thing here. We got a 3 hour episode. It's fantastic. All content, more room for commercial. Anyway, but let's okay. We'll get back to your. But it's good to have, I think, that context too, so you can see where I'm coming from, my theory on dreams. And it's I love to follow these things too because I'm explaining stuff to the audience as well. Like, what am I doing? There's some people who get the wrong
Hmm.
idea of like, oh, this guy calls himself a wizard. He deals with spooky woo dreams. He's given, magical interpretations. No, it's all psychology and the way I believe the brain functions and how our thought process works. It's my conceptions of it. And hopefully the proof is in the pudding from that regard. So we're going to try to prove your
Yeah.
pudding here. Your husband and you are on a cruise. And this is something you do in real life. You've been on a couple cruises.
Yeah, and we don't really enjoy them, so that's why that was pretty random, the dream. But
Yeah.
yes, we've been on two probably together, and it's not a thing that really appeals to us, just because we prefer enjoying the destination a lot more than
Being
12
on the boat.
hours or 8 hours or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Well, that's good. See, now this too, for folks out there and for you specifically, add whatever context comes up as we're discussing each thing. So I mentioned cruises, real life experience. What's your real life experience? We've been on two. We don't really enjoy them. Here's why. Love those details. That's actually what gets us really good
Mhm.
answers. I was writing down enjoy the destination more. I do tend to want to get where I'm going also. So I resonate with that. The idea of sometimes the journey is the point. You're going on a nice walk to look at the scenery. That's what you're doing. Sometimes you need to just get to the store because you got groceries to get and you got an appointment. It's like, let's get it done. Let's go where we're going to do the thing so I can go home and make dinner.
Right.
So right off the bat, we've got putting yourself into a situation that is not preferred. And that's not the way I want to say it, but it's like, imagine you're in a place you typically wouldn't want to be. There's something going on with the framing from the very beginning. You didn't put yourself
Hmm.
in your own podcasting studio. You didn't put yourself in your husband's office at home or at work. You weren't at Disneyland. It's like, why a cruise ship? What does a cruise ship mean to you? This is why you can't go to a dream
Mm,
book and say, I looked up ships and ocean, and this is the interpretation. Probably not.
that's
But your mileage may vary, as I say, not trying to crap on anyone.
Well,
Yeah.
it's interesting that you point that out because I had not considered. I avoid crowds.
Mm,
I'm very claustrophobic, and so I feel because I pick up on energy and chaos, I avoid crowds. I can't
me
even do
too.
New Year's Eve in a big crowd or anything like that. So it is interesting that you point that out, that I'm already on a ship with a crowd of people. So
Yeah.
that's already tense for me.
Yeah, exactly. So you're in a situation that you would typically prefer not to be on multiple levels. Like, I'm not doing a process that I enjoy necessarily, and I'm in a circumstance, a physical surrounding that is usually above and beyond or outside of my comfort zone. There's something going on there in those concepts. If you ever have a better way of phrasing something I'm trying to say, you don't have
Yeah.
to. But like I said, I
Yeah.
just ramble to give people an opportunity to think.
I am definitely an introvert. I know that about myself, and I could only handle crowds and groups for so long before I need to come back into my little cave
Yeah,
to refuel. And so it is, and I find myself, especially now after the pandemic, because it was in many ways, the pandemic was a nice break for me. We were very, very active in 2019,
mm.
hosting all sorts of events, and I was experiencing burnout. So when
Oh
those
yeah,
first initial weeks happened of lockdown, it was soothing for me. It was a
yeah,
break. It was like, yeah, I get to be at home. I don't have to do this. No one's calling me. I don't have to get up early. Like I can just relax. The roads are clear. I can spend time at the park. That's initially, it felt as a natural introvert. That part of the pandemic kind of made life a little easier for me. And now
yeah.
that we're coming back out, I'm dragging my feet, Ben. I'm like, oh, I'm coming back to groups again. It's interesting because I like the sense of community. I really do. But maybe I've become more sensitive to groups now.
Yeah. Well, you definitely have comparison experiences. You probably saw me smiling. I'm like, that's me. I never want to leave my cave. If I never had to leave this little box, I step outside to, get some fresh air once in a
Right.
while, but I don't want to go anywhere. I'm not into travel. I'm not into crowds. It reminds me of like the situation of, Brer Fox and Brer Rabbit, that old story of like, oh no, don't throw me in the briar patch. Don't make me stay home alone by myself. Oh, the humanity.
Oh
But
my goodness.
see, these are all very powerful associations. You go with it. So just from the fact of being on a crowded cruise ship, we're starting to look at, and you got to, I think, a very key point. Your life experience is trending back towards putting you in situations where you are in public conducting processes where you're surrounded by more people than you prefer to be. So you're maybe trying to conceptualize, how do I engage in things I think are important and meaningful, things I want to do, but that incorporate elements of the things that don't come naturally to me, things I don't prefer, things I don't find enjoyable. That's like, is that making sense somewhere in there?
Yeah. Yeah. So as a podcaster like you, this is my job where I'm at in this space, in this studio. This is where I work. This
Mm,
is where I'm at full time.
it's my
I
happy
mean, I do
place.
other things. I do editing, but it's my happy
Yeah,
place
yeah.
too. It's my comfort zone. And a sister of mine, when she's a school teacher, when she went back to the classroom after the pandemic, and people, the teachers were ready to go back to school, she said to me, when you begin to integrate, it's almost like integrating back into society. She said, do it slowly
Hmm.
and don't overwhelm yourself because it might be too much. And
Yeah.
I thought, "Well, that's ridiculous. What is she talking about? Like I'm a hermit or what? Like, what are you talking about?" But I
Guilty.
have found that while I'm happy to connect again with people that I love and admire. I've gone to two conferences or three in the last year and a half. I don't remember. While I'm doing that, I feel extra tired, it takes me longer to recover. Even my husband, he's a little bit of an introvert too. After one of our conferences, uh, it took us over a week to recover from the drainage
Oh
that
yeah,
we experienced. And we felt like physically drained and exhausted
for sure.
from all the mingling because you're at conferences, it's educational, but it's also social and a lot of get-togethers. And I think I now understand what she was saying to me is that you will feel bombarded, whereas being around a group of five people might have felt okay in the past. Now I may feel like it's too much. So maybe start, going to lunch with one person here or
Yeah.
mingling with two people there. Everyone's different. Some people thrive off connections, and the extroverts need to be out there.
Oh yeah.
And some of us need to be at home
No, for sure. And
in
that's a
small
great thing too.
groups.
And I love just natural conversations. And then bam, I see something that is and actually I'm probably going to, I almost never do this. And I've been telling myself to try to pay attention to it more. I'm about to say something that I think would make a great, you know, short. Hopefully I can condense it down. But the basic idea
Okay.
of a lot of people misunderstand what introvert and extrovert actually means, how it functions, and then that nested within what it looks like. So a lot of folks out there still in the pop culture sense think introvert means shy or lack of self-confidence, inability to socialize. And what really goes on there is that it is the absorption or discharge of energy, as you say. Uh, Extroverts need to charge their battery by, let's say, the friction of social contact. And that energizes them. And they're like, and so an extrovert that cannot socialize becomes, drained. They're like, this is, I got, they have very, they can end up depressed. I can't connect with as many people as social butterfly style. I can't connect with as many people as I really need to feel good. Introverts, exactly the opposite. And again, I think you understand this. I'm explaining it to the audience mostly. But introverts need isolation to recharge. The friction of connection with other people, as much as we may enjoy it and be capable of it and not be shy, but be very confident and, put on public displays and do all kinds of things you think a shy person can't do. We got to go home and be alone for significant quantities of time, because that recharge is very slow. It takes isolation and calm and meditation and, my cup of tea in a quiet place and a good book, that kind of thing.
I
So it's
love that
very,
you said book.
yeah.
Because it's very much like that. Like, it's not that we hate people. It's nothing like that. What it is, and you mentioning a book, I love to read. It's that I feel, and I think most of us introverts have a very rich inner life. At least I feel that about myself,
Yeah.
that I'm a naturally curious person, and so being by myself, and I'm not referring to being a hermit or anything like that, but being by myself, I can enjoy my inner world, and I can connect to nature more profoundly when it's
Mm.
just myself. I also, in the past, have been very comfortable traveling by myself outside of the country, and finding such joy in watching a sunset and taking a nature walk. I'm like my best friend in many ways that way.
Yeah.
And then when I come out, I get lost in the crowd. When I'm in a group setting, I'm the observer, I'm the listener, I'm the one that is paying attention to the dynamics of the group. I don't get lost in the group. I pay attention.
Yeah.
And then I see where more than anything, I enjoy hearing other people. But so to kind of find the medium, like the right place for me is in that one conversation with one person that is rich and profound, that conversation. So I do well one-on-one like this. I
Yeah.
really enjoy this, whether it's interview style, Zoom, or just having coffee, tea with a friend. I love that. Like I going back and forth with topics and in a conversation that also adds to me. So it's not like I need to be alone all the time. It's more like now, if this was a conversation where I'm not interested in anything you're having to say, for example, it would deplete me.
Yeah.
Or if I'm talking and you're not really listening, and I can feel it, it would deplete me as well.
For
But
sure.
what you're saying, obviously, I'm intrigued by this whole topic of dreams, and
We
so of
both get pretty
course the
animated. Yeah.
wizard. So I am interested. So it does add value to me. So it doesn't feel depleting.
Yeah.
So I just kind of want to let the listeners know that it's not necessarily that I need to be isolated completely, but probably after our conversation, because I'm already feeling like my energy is raising, like is improving. I'm probably after this going to enjoy a nice walk with my dog.
Yeah.
And I
Absolutely.
won't need to talk for another couple of hours because so
Yeah.
that's kind of
Well,
like,
there'll
yeah,
be so much to process after this experience, and you got to just let it
yes.
kind of percolate. But there's another thing you said there I wanted to touch on too, just in broad strokes of the ideas, easing back into socialization after a period of not. I think of it like easing back into going to the gym. If you used to be able to run, 15 minutes flat out on a treadmill, and you've been rather sedentary, start by walking. Don't go right back to running. You're going to pull a muscle. We can kind of, in a way, pull our mental muscle by overtaxing skills and coping skills and processing abilities we haven't used in a while. And there's mental bandwidth and there's kind of mental energy in a way, and it takes mental energy to focus, basically just pay attention. That's where kind of the concept of paying attention comes from. There's an accounting balance of available energy you can attribute to different things. And sometimes you run out and you're just like, I can't. We say things like, I'm sorry, I'm losing focus. And it's not anything. It's not sometimes you don't care. And it's like, I can't force myself to pay attention to this more. In a way, I've run out of mental energy for that. But the other side is, we do run out of that mental energy in general of like, I wish this is so fascinating. I wish I could keep concentrating. I just can't. And we run out of that energy. And that also needs to be stretched like a muscle and worked back up to a certain capacity. So it's a very profound idea to say, don't rush back into things you haven't done in a while. Take it easy. So it's basically
Yeah.
good advice all the way around, I think.
I want to add, since you mentioned it,
Yeah.
because I realized that physically I lost strength
Mm,
during the pandemic
yeah.
because I wasn't exercising. I'm not going to use the excuse that the gyms were closed because that only happened for a little bit.
Yeah.
But I did put like a lot of energy into the podcast, like I mentioned. So I had a lot of work and I was sitting a lot, but we just started going back to our yoga studio and I got a membership so that I can make sure that I do yoga. And I realized I lost muscle, I lost strength.
Yeah.
Um, and that kind of saddened me. But as I've been going 2 times a week or so, I'm building it back up. And it's more like I'm realizing that I had a lot of stuck energy in my body, like
Mm,
a lot of maybe trauma from the pandemic that I
sure.
felt like I'm feeling that I'm starting to release it. So I'm becoming more open and flexible again, like open in the sense of the emotional aspect, not just physical. Like I'm opening up again, but I really did shut down. Like when we shut down, my body shut down too.
For sure. Yeah. And I think all of this is relevant to, and again, we're still on, so I'm on a boat surrounded by a
Yes.
crowd of people. We haven't got any further than that. All of this is very relevant. So you're very much encapsulating some of these ideas of I'm facing the imminent future reality of coming out of my shell, re engaging in things that I want to phrase it carefully in terms of like, it's not like you don't want to do it. Like, if there was a way to do public engagement where you didn't have to be surrounded by a crowd in public, that would be ideal. Unfortunately, not possible. So you're trying to conceptualize, how do I do this thing that is inherently to me uncomfortable, difficult? I'm going to struggle with it. I'm going to have to be careful how I engage it, but I'm going to do it because I believe it's meaningful to me. You know, I'm going to put myself in a position where I'm uncomfortable on purpose for a good reason. Is that feeling right in terms of putting yourself on this boat and looking at that
Yeah.
forthcoming return to public life in a way?
That's part of it. What comes to mind
Yeah.
that I hadn't thought about it until you started sharing that
That's why I
is
ramble.
that no, but it's good because it actually sparked an interest of maybe this could be what I'm facing too, is that the work that we do is in the field of health and wellness,
Mm-hmm.
meaning, but in two different things. When I first met my husband and I learned what he did, um, he works with very sick people.
Mm.
So he's a vascular surgeon. He works with, he's pretty much saving lives on a regular basis
Oh,
by
yeah.
removing plaque when a person has had a stroke or they have a blockage in the leg that they could possibly lose the leg. So I remember I was more spiritual before I met him. I worked more and I lived in California. So I lived in San Diego. So you can imagine I was kind of this inner hippie of mine that, was doing more energy work. I come into this reality with him and I remember thinking, aren't you affected by the energy of your patients, like being around sickness all the time,
Mm.
just sickness?
Sure.
And then I got interested in wanting to support people too. And that's where my focus is on. I research a lot on disease because of my guests as well, not just patients, but most of us talk about sickness and then finding solutions, healthier solutions, so that we can help patients get off their medications and hopefully avoid surgery and cancer and all of that. And so I realized that now that I'm coming back to yoga, now that I'm doing my work with my coach, and really working with my own past childhood traumas and cleaning up my own energy, I'm realizing that I haven't been taking care of my energy. Like
Mm.
I'm coming back to self-care, but I'm the person that I put myself last and I other things become priority because I want to help, I want to help, I want to help. Like I want to help people
Yeah.
not be sick. I want to help people not suffer. And I'm not doing that for myself.
Yeah.
So
That's a good thing to enumerate, elucidate, to incorporate into the broader picture of what's going on here. One thing I didn't ask you, and it just occurred to me, was any idea why you're in line? There's two lines. You and your husband are in one line, the other guy's in the other line. What's up?
he kind of was to my right and the sick person was to the left. I don't know why there were two lines, even though there was a crowd.
Sure.
There was that division in the middle for sure. That's why I say there was two lines. So there was that, like it was divided,
And
like
it
a
seemed like
little
everyone was
area
facing in the
where
same direction. They're going somewhere in a way, or waiting to queued up for something.
queued up would be the word
Yeah.
because I remember it was kind of, we were in the ship, but against the hull, like on the deck, but
Okay.
against the hull. So we were all pushed up, crowded against like the hull of the ship on one of the levels. And yeah, like we were all queued up. That's a good word to go somewhere. I don't know where. I don't know where the door was or anything, but we were all kind of pressed. And so there's that tension
Yeah.
already. And then that person being lost in the crowd, dying in the crowd, and no one noticing except for me.
For sure. And your experience of that, and I should have asked, I do all of these differently, and I get on my own case afterwards of like, I completely forgot to ask, what did you see? What did you feel? Like, I follow my intuitive tangent. Sometimes I can't do it any better. Sometimes I'm trying to bring a little more process to my process. Long story short, enough about me. Too late for that. Right. These are, I think, important elements, like why the lines. And sometimes we don't get a good answer. I do ask those things occasionally. So if you imagine you are in a line and there's a press of people, it's more about, but you don't know where it's going. Sometimes the lack of evidence is evidence itself. That wasn't something you needed to know to express the concept. It's like, it doesn't matter where you're going. It doesn't matter why you're in line. You're in line. Lines happen. Fair enough. So the absence of that means that the destination, say, of the end of the line isn't as relevant to the concept itself. So
Right.
that's perfectly fine. If I rattle a doorknob, it doesn't come open, so be it. And like I said, cut me off anytime something comes to you. But so the person you're seeing is to your left. So you're in the right hand line ish, and on the left hand side is another line.
No,
No.
I'm more to the left of
Okay.
to that left line, if you want to call it a line.
Okay.
Although it was like a large crowd, but divided in two. One group to the left, one to the right, and I was more towards the left. That's how I spotted that person. Like I
Gotcha.
spotted the top of their head first.
Okay. And was the left hand line that you were in the seaside or the ship side?
It was where all of us. It's more like I'm facing the ship. I'm facing
Okay.
the ocean is behind me. Like there's a
Gotcha.
rail, and we're like on one of the decks of the ship.
So in a
And
way,
I'm
whatever's happening
facing.
is on the ship. You're not disembarking, but
Nope.
you're definitely queued up for something that's happening on the ship.
Yeah.
Okay. And you've probably been in exactly that situation on your past voyages where you were like, we're in a big crowd of people and we're all waiting to go somewhere, and you don't even know why, but it's something that you got to do something while you're waiting around on the ship. And
Right.
there's a lot of people. And that's one reason I probably wouldn't want to be, trapped on a fishing bobber in the middle of a giant body of water,
Yeah.
with so many people. And what do? I go to an even tinier little box to get away from them. Probably never going to take a cruise. I don't like airplanes, don't
Right.
like buses, that kind
I
of
would
thing.
say disembarking is one of the worst experiences to me
Yeah.
On a ship, on a cruise, and also just kind of same thing. Waiting to go on the ship is just as bad. Those are the waiting lines are something that I don't do, and I know people do that for concerts and for
Oh yeah.
stores to open. And they can camp overnight. I will never be that person.
No, me either. Not so much. If I can't just get in and get it done, I don't even want to be there. Like, what are we doing here?
Right.
Even, and I've had my experiences with that too. Like, I believe, a few years and years ago, I lined up an hour or 2 hours ahead of time for one of the Lord of the Rings movies,
Oh.
with some friends. And it was an experience,
Well, you're the wizard. You have to.
you
That's
got to do it. I
you're
mean,
right there. You got to do it.
Gandalf, a hero of mine, for sure. Gandalf and Socrates are my go-to examples of, I think, historical and literary wizards, honestly.
Yes. Yeah.
So very interesting. You're facing towards the ship, and you said you saw him. He's ahead of you in your same line or in the other line?
Yes. Yes. No, on the same left side. Like in my line. I call it a
Gotcha.
line, but yeah. Saw movement, top of the head, maybe saw him raise his hand, kind of like something's going on, almost like actually the way that I imagine it is a person who's struggling in the water. Maybe he's going under, but tries to kind of move himself up to be seen before he drowns.
Yeah.
That's kind of the feeling that I was having with this individual.
For sure. And you can imagine, I mean, this is why I love dreams and the archetypal and metaphorical stuff. We have a metaphor, drowning in a sea of people in a way.
Oh,
Yeah.
of
Did I
course.
sing?
Oh, you're good.
For sure.
That's
And yeah,
awesome.
that's very much an introvert's experience sometimes too, is there's so many people around me that I feel I'm being swamped as if by waves, and we conceptualize emotions as waves too. A rush of feeling or a crash of, adrenaline dropping off, and we have physical sensations we can link to those things. So you've got a guy who's, in a way, he's straddling a couple of different things. One is the very real physical medical concerns you deal with all the time, and another is a symbolic representation of you in a sense of, here's another person. I'm going to externalize it a bit. I'm watching this, even in a way as if you're watching yourself or someone experiencing something similar. Here's someone having both a metaphysical experience similar to my own of drowning in a sea of people, showing distress signs in this stressful space, because of a physical symptom. So it's like this double layered, it's packing two ideas into one in a way. Here's someone who's,
Yeah.
here's someone
Almost like,
experiencing, oh, go ahead.
would you say something like projecting? I'm projecting onto someone else
Yeah.
my experience in a way.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a great word. And a lot of people get that wrong in the pop culture sense too, of like using it as an argument tactic. Oh, you're just projecting. Sometimes people do. Yes, sure.
Okay,
But no.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. But there's a very real validity, and I think you are. What we do in our head is we often do project what we're feeling in the very traditional clinical sense onto a dreamlike figure to separate it from ourselves, sometimes because we're uncomfortable with the thoughts, sometimes because we are literally taking a third person perspective on ourselves. Like, I need to get some distance from this problem. Imagine what I'm experiencing is happening to someone else and analyze what to do about me by thinking about how I would help them. So I think that's exactly what's going on here, is that internal self-projection of a third person scenario. There's some people who believe everything in the dream is you. It represents something you're thinking, whether it's literally you. But I think this guy might actually be like, let's assign him qualities of distress that I might experience in a similar situation. And then, like I said, there's a dual layer thing of like, it wasn't enough that he would feel uncomfortable. And that might have to do with, a bit of a, what am I trying to say? You, if I may, seem a little uncomfortable with the idea that your mere emotional preference to not be in the middle of a crowd is sufficiently meaningful to warrant changing your behavior, establishing firmer boundaries. It's the giver side of things. Like, I kind of feel like I'm giving too much and being taken advantage of, but I just can't say no. And it's hard to say no. And so you kind of externalize that a bit and say, what am I trying to say? Let me imagine this is someone else having the exact same problem. I would tell them to get their boundaries up. I sure as hell would, in a way you can't seem to tell yourself. Go ahead.
Yes. So it's easier to see it in someone else when I want to. So it's easier for me to offer support to other people and not see that I need the same thing. I sometimes do feel, and it could be so today's Monday. We had a very busy weekend, right, with other obligations. And I started to think, I'm not just a podcaster. If I only had a podcast, I think I would be comfortable with that. But I'm also sort of an event coordinator, and I collaborate with other groups to accomplish other things. And we had and it's always like deadlines. And when I meet the deadline, I barely meet it, and I have another project going on.
Right.
And I think I was kind of probably feeling that I had a lot going on last week to prepare for an online event on Saturday. And I remember getting up Saturday feeling exhausted. And this is all to promote how we support our community. And so I was with it was a total of 4 groups that are called pods in our community. and we're all leaders. And so and it always feels wonderful. So that's the duality about all of this, is
Yeah.
that I feel great when we complete an assignment and a project or something like that. But it's all the other things that it entails, all the work behind the scenes that I'm part of, because I mainly do it. I do a lot of it on my own. And and then I still have a podcast to release. I still have to do my editing on top of all of that. And so in many ways, I do feel like I'm drowning. When, again, this is interesting, when we understand that stress affects our health, we understand that there's value in having healthy relationships. We understand sleep is important, and
Oh
when
yeah.
you're sleep deprived, that can hurt your health. And so I went to sleep last night thinking, and the last couple of nights I've gone to sleep thinking, I have to work on getting adequate sleep, and I have to maybe hire a coach to get me into the gym. Like, I'm thinking of things that will help my well-being, because I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling stressed from a lot of obligations that
Oh
I
yeah.
didn't have during the pandemic because we were shut down.
Yep. You were not stuck on a boat with other people at that time. And there's a wonderful expression going on there. I'm trying to encapsulate it if I can. It's like you are not grudgingly participating in these things. You do this willingly because you believe the goal is relevant. You're not being dragged into this kicking and screaming. Then again, you don't necessarily enjoy the process as much as feel the result is meaningful. It's a different experience than someone who, for them, the process is fun. They love doing the thing, and they're actually the meaning perhaps that they're drawing from it is also the experience of being the center of attention. Now, this is not necessarily a bad thing. It's not a judgmental way of saying it, but it's a different psychological dynamic to say, I believe in the result so strongly, I'm going to put myself through stuff that is difficult, that doesn't come naturally to me, that isn't invigorating. So there's something going on here of, like, imagine yourself as a third person. Let's observe similar characteristics in this person, and
Mhm.
if we go with kind of the broad strokes we seem to have kind of at least touched on in terms of the setting, the experience, we're getting up to now you engage with the person. I mean, the purpose of putting them there was so you could do something about it. Even if it was just watch, you could have actually told yourself, let's imagine what would happen if I just did nothing, if I did nothing to help someone that I think should be helped. I very carefully describe these things to people, not to say this is secretly what you want. Not at all. We do a lot of thought experiments saying, what if I put a boundary here? What would that look like? And then we decide after the analysis whether we're comfortable with the result and it comports with our value set. That's one type of thing we do. I use the example of, a person who's horrified that they had a dream where they stabbed their dog. They do not secretly wish to harm their animal. That is not the meaning of that dream. I guarantee you 99.999% of the time. So
Mhm.
what did you do in this setting? You've got this guy, you've attributed to him some of the problems that you're having for a third person analysis. Now you've got the act of engaging with him. It could have gone a much different way. Your choice was, I'm going to engage. I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to see it. I'm going to interact with it and put myself in a position of being responsible to solve it, if possible, which is
Mhm.
probably the entire purpose of the dreams. Like, let's look at yourself here and what can you do to help yourself. So I think that's where we're going.
Yeah.
So it said on my paper, you kind of, the phrasing you used initially was pushed through the crowd. They
Yes.
now I don't imagine that being forceful, like make a hole and you're shoving people, but there's a quality of the crowd which presents at least a mild resistance. You got to kind of shoulder past obstacles. Is that how you're
Yeah.
experiencing it?
Yeah. And I probably did push through the crowd because I was trying to rescue the individual
So there
because
was a bit
nobody
more of a
noticed.
forceful approach.
It's more like, this is an emergency. please notice this
Fair enough.
person.
Yeah.
And I had to get there to save the person, to
Yeah.
rescue the person. So yes, I pushed, not in a mean way, but you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
in a movie, like not necessarily I was trying to be their hero, but I
You had a job to
somehow
do,
knew,
and it was important
yeah,
enough. Yeah.
I knew in my dream that yelling would not, in a crowd, would not, my voice would not be heard.
Yes.
I had to push through the crowd, and then I called for help, which was my husband, because I didn't know. I figured the doctor could help, but I didn't think. I'm surely there might have been I could have said, "Is there a doctor in the house?" But I just called for him.
Yeah. No, for sure. And that's very reasonable. I think that's absolutely connected to what you got going on here too. I've got all these ideas. It's like, I'm almost trying to catch up with my own brain. I'm like, oh, I see it. It's running away from me. Catch up, say
Right.
all the things quickly. But there's something I'd say meaningful in that approach. And you very well could have, I love doing these, imagine a counterfactual hypothesis. You very well could have just scene change. You're standing next to the person. There's something about pushing your way through the crowd in a way that was not aggressive, not malicious, but purposeful, like as much respect as you have for people and you would never put your hands on them in any mean way. This is a circumstance where you are justified in they're going to move. They are going to move because you got something that needs to be done. So this is the idea of applying the right and appropriate amount of force to a congestion, forcing it aside to let you approach resolving the problem. I don't know if that makes you think
Yes.
anything.
Well, the pushing obviously happened, but I also remember there was a gap in between, which is why I said there was a left line, like two lines, because there was a division in the middle. So while I pushed, I also went through that space that
Okay. Yeah.
made my going through the crowd easier. So it's not like I was pushing through the line
Gotcha.
when there was a division in the middle. So I only pushed enough as I was going through that middle part.
Yeah. And that's interesting
That
too,
makes
because
sense.
there, it almost seems like that gap is, well, I think certainly that gap is necessary to it. There is a way. Like some people say, there's no way. It's a solid wall. No. There's gap. There is a path which facilitates, and there's a bit of a struggle to get to the path. And then once you're there, you've gotten the obstacles out of the way. Now you're on the right track perhaps, and you're able to reach your goal more efficiently.
Yes.
Good deal.
Yes,
So
that resonates. Yes.
nice. I think there's very much something to that. Is like, how to do this. You know the surroundings are, there's going to be a bit of struggle, but there will be a clearing in which you can make progress of a certain kind. So you get to the person, and that's when you notice it is a bit of a taller, say heavier set person, possibly dark hair, Caucasian. I don't know that
Yeah.
is necessarily
And
relevant to anything. Could have been anyone.
actually, the only reason that the physical aspect mattered is, I say heavier, but more like a big boned, taller
Broader
individual. In other
shoulders,
words,
just
almost
larger.
like,
Yeah.
the shape of Frankenstein, very square.
Interesting.
That's what that's what I mean by bigger, like bulkier or heavy. I'm not talking about weight, I'm talking about structure. So I don't know how
Yeah.
to describe that, but so in other words, someone who looks strong in the crowd, not even muscular either. It's
Yeah.
like Frankenstein, like, the
That's a
square
great
body. I don't
analogy
know how
too,
to
because that guy was put together from spare parts and brought back to life. There's a very interesting connection there too.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Very much
Yeah,
had to get his
because
heart starting again with, and provide electricity to the brain by getting a lightning strike. Yeah.
yeah, that is true.
Fantastic
Because when you
analogy there.
think of someone like Frankenstein, I always think of like a tree, like I don't know why, but
Very
maybe
solid, very stout in a way that is
there
not
you go.
rotund. Yeah.
Solid is a
Not
good
a, yeah,
word.
not a Santa Claus, more of a, Schwarzenegger in a way,
Yeah, but
but
not
even
even
not a muscle
muscular,
bound bro.
just
Yeah.
big bone, tall, big bone, like like
Broad
an extra
shoulders.
tall person.
Yeah.
I'm a short person. I'm 5'2",
Yeah.
and I could tell that person was like way up here.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
So I wonder if there's anything about, I mean, I'm looking at the physical characteristics, like it might just be the first thing that came to mind, might be the last image you saw on YouTube before you went to bed that night. You're like, oh, there's a random person, throw them in there because why not? But in terms of most of the characters, why dark hair, why white skin, who knows? That probably doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But something about that, the physicality of the person, someone who looks broadly, generally healthy, you wouldn't assume they were about to have a disaster.
The only reason the person, I want to say yes to that question. The only reason the person looked unhealthy is remember I said the person started to morph.
Yeah.
Like the sickness started to happen. A look of I'm dying
Yeah.
started to happen rather than seeing in other words, if you see that person, you wouldn't say they're frail initially, like they're
Exactly.
frail
Yeah,
and dying. That's why I think the size matters,
Yes.
because normally you would say, oh, that's just, it's kind of strong looking, not muscular, but kind of like a
the
tree,
picture of health.
strong.
In a
And
way,
then
yeah.
suddenly started to morph into death. I don't
For
know how to
sure.
describe
Yeah, there's
that.
definitely people who you look at them and they don't look right. They're pale, sweaty, or sickly
Yes.
looking, sunken eyes. So I think
Like the
that's,
eyes started to like disappear and you can see the veins, like the
yeah.
skin surface started to disappear and the person's dying and things start to stand out like in a horror movie.
Yeah, a very rapid
Yes.
decay in a way, but not a gross,
Yes.
pussy, melting Indiana Jones Nazi face type of way. But as a time lapse of a real person's
Yes.
face. If we ever saw that the what is it called, the buccal fat in the face, it starts to dissipate and that corpse like sunken death mask. And you even imagine it going further and the skin melts away and you get the word I think you were looking for earlier was body works. The body works.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
That
I
was a
love
while
that.
back. Yes.
When I went there
Yes.
10 years ago, I wanted to sign a thing right away to say, put me on display. Just plasticize me.
Wouldn't
You
that
can
be
have my
cool? Oh my
body. Let's see.
God. I really enjoyed it. I love that.
It was so weird to see the giant, they take stuff and they put it in glass in a way. They put the stand-up figures in glass cases, but there's the kind of idea of a block of glass and something suspended in it. The nervous system, it looks like this weird space octopus alien, roughly in the shape of a human being. And so you realize that's actually our entire brain. In a way, like the nerves that go up to our fingertips is connected right to what we think of as this 3-pound chunk of gray matter here, because there's, the top part and then the sub part and then the stuff that's in the neck and then everything else that's connected. And I was talking this with another guy a couple days ago, a month ago at this point, when this gets released, but there's times where our hand moves and then it tells the brain that it moved. And we don't know what just happened. We get these nerve responses that are automatic. And really, when they've done tests on this stuff, the brain lights up after the nerves flashed. And it's like, where is this signal coming from? What's doing the thinking? Is there a brain in our hand? In a way, yeah, it's all these nerves that are connected. I'm probably explaining it badly. A neuroscientist will go, he's so close. But so there's a concept to that. All of this, anyway, I just had to say that about body works because I love it.
I'm fascinated by the human body and the brain too, like the whole psychological aspect of it. But the physical part of it, the anatomy, fascinates me. And and when we went, it was probably 10 years ago. It was very early in my relationship. My husband and I went together. And he's used to seeing a lot of things. But for me, it was fascinating, just intriguing to see to have access to a body that way without calling it a corpse.
Yeah, for sure that this was a real person that wanted you to learn something from them. They wanted to be a living science experiment in a way that is not derogatory. Like they're not being tested upon. They're like, show me to the world so they can understand themselves better. That's got a poetic beauty to it. The best thing I loved, not just the octopus looking nerve system thing, but if you take your guts and you stretch them out in one long straight line, it's like 30, 40, 50 feet of this tiny little tube. And that's what absorbs all the nutrients. And that's so many places things go wrong in the human bodies, our gut health and the biome and whether we're processing stuff and extracting the right nutrients, is there, what do they call bioavailability of certain certain things depending on the form,
Yes.
two different, the same substance in two different pills. One breaks down, one doesn't. Sometimes you're paying for expensive pee, as they say, with some supplements, right?
True.
For sure. Okay, so what do we do with that kind of iconography? And it immediately, he went from a tall, healthy to something where not only is he deceased, but his exterior becomes a representation of this science display that you found fascinating and meaningful. There's something there. It's like if I may, and I don't want to say this is the only possible idea, but it's almost a less emotional and more clinical observation of, now I can see this problem, the problem this person represents, in a way that is more dispassionate and scientifically fascinating rather than emotionally distressing.
Yes,
That feels
more scientific in the sense that the reason I knew he was having a heart attack is not because he was touching his chest, because I could see what was happening to the heart. I could see, it's very sci-fi in the sense
yeah,
that I could see the spreading of, you can't say arteries because we don't have enough for the amount that I saw. So what I saw was his eye started to quickly morph, like one of the eyes started to quickly morph into the layers, deeper into the layers, almost like you could see the socket. And then the heart did the same thing with like a combination of like blue and red,
mm,
almost like several arteries or vessels that started to like a lightning strike, and then I could see, oh, the heart is what it was, the heart that was wrong
yeah.
there.
There's something
So
powerful
I
in the
could see
idea
it.
that the obscuring exterior has been stripped away to the point where you can more clearly see the specific nature of the problem. And you've
Hmm.
analogized it in this sense of something you're very familiar with. Not only that, but something you feel your husband is a specialist in. I mean, literally, he's the
Hmm.
specialist in the heart. So there's also
Hmm.
very much a connection in this externalization of the broader problem and how you're going to observe it, understand it, and ultimately respond to it. You rely on him
Hmm.
in your life, I would say,
Yeah.
quite a bit to be, what am I trying to say? You'd probably say, well, of course, and maybe you do, maybe you don't. I could be assuming, but the idea of you consider him such a reliable person, someone that is, what am I trying to say? Someone that is so important to your good mental health, your stability in life in general, that it is in relation to you looking at yourself in this problem. It is as if someone having a heart attack has a heart surgeon within walking distance to immediately try to save their life. Something connecting there. I think I said that
I'm
way too many
I
words.
no, and please don't feel, I mean, feel free to ask directly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're not going to offend me. I think in many ways I do see him very closely as the role that he plays as a physician, in the sense that I'm aware of a lot of the work that he does and the lives that he saves. And we had a very busy weekend, and after that, he said, "Do you mind if we go by the hospital? I have to check on a patient." So I said, "Okay, I'll sit in the car." And then I wanted coffee, so he said, "Why don't you come in?" And it was a weekend, and he said, "Let me give you a tour," even though he already had, but he likes to, he's proud of what he does. You know, he's the captain of his ship. And so he's showing me the cath lab and the recovery room and all of that. And I decide to absorb it, even though like he also has a clinic where he does some of the smaller cases. But I said, let me just imagine him here in his scrubs working with a patient. Like, let me just look through those lenses, because I don't see him that way. He's invited me in the past, but I can't even watch procedures on television.
Yeah. No, I
I
can't
can't
either.
handle all
I
that.
get nauseous and a little faint,
Yeah,
and yeah.
I can't. But I know that what he does is very important. And if it weren't for the red tape associated with insurance companies and all the other stuff that comes along with medicine, his craft is very important to him. And so, and I admire that about him. And in many ways, I do see him. Not only that, just the role that he plays in saving lives and the work that he does, but also when you said that he's an important figure in terms of my stability, I would definitely say that he grounded me because I felt I was like, I used to call myself a social butterfly, but I wasn't that social. Like I said, when I'm ready to come out of my cave, I come out. But
Yeah.
I was very much a free spirit. Had my foot in Costa Rica. I was going to relocate to Costa Rica before I met him. I could move from one place to the other and be. I can plant my feet anywhere. I guess you can say that. I'm not a person that likes to be tied down too much to one location. Uh, I can plant my feet anywhere. And then I met him, and it's just been very stable, which has allowed me to be more productive and more like mission driven and focused.
For sure.
I don't know if that has a role to play with any of this, but
Yeah. Absolutely. Your
yeah.
conception
So
of him. Yeah.
yeah, but
Um,
I wouldn't say that I rely on him for my mental health because I say I wouldn't say that, but I don't know. I would say that I've been working on my mental health most of my life.
mm,
Because I had a lot of trauma and just many things that I faced early on in my life. I've started with the school counselor in high school who I confided in, and she would pull me out of that once a week out of a class to go into group therapy, like a group setting. And I found how effective that could be for me to be in a safe place where I can open up. And
yeah.
so I've been doing a lot of work for many years. And like I said, I every week I have my person that I have a safe place with, and we work on some aspect of myself. So I would say that I do a lot more of that work. Um,
Yeah.
it's important for me to be able to be open to that. And so to be, in some ways, my coach calls me out when I do project, when I'm projecting. And I'm comfortable, I'm okay with that because that's how we get through. That's how I have breakthroughs is I need for someone else to have a different perspective than the situation that I'm seeing myself in.
Yeah. Sometimes there's no other way to do it. You need a second opinion. I did want to
Yes.
say, looks like you're frozen on my screen for some reason. I don't understand. I don't
Oh
know
my
if,
God, I am frozen on my screen
yeah,
too.
I don't know if it might help to maybe turn your camera off and on again really quickly. Just see if it,
Oh, how long have I been frozen? Like, I don't even know how
most of that
I turn it
explanation you
off.
just gave, but it's okay. We can let it
Am
be
I
what it is.
back?
Hey, I see you
Oh,
there. Wonderful. Yeah. It
it,
happens. Oh,
lately my camera started doing certain things. Like my computer started like fading the light. It just
oh
happened
yeah.
yesterday.
If I take
Oh,
one
I
of these
wonder.
white pages and hold it up to the camera, the entire picture darkens when I set it back down and it doesn't come
Oh
back.
my God.
So I don't
Oh no.
hold these up to the camera anymore. No. So all that explanation was good and it's fantastic, relevant nuance. So definitely my statement could have been understood and might have been true, but to say that, you're overly reliant on your husband or lost without him. But that's what you explained, I think, is more the direction I was going with it. The idea that you have tremendous respect for him, that your relationship to him is very important. And not only that, you consider him an expert in his field. And it's that expertise in his field that that
Oh, am I Oh no.
oh,
I thought we
I
froze.
probably
Sorry.
just, I get lost in my hang processing. Little wheel starts. I should put that on my forehead. Wheel starts spinning. Um, it's an analogy to your respect for his professional competence. This is specifically framed as a problem is in his area of expertise. So you can, and in that way, you rely on his competence. But I think that what am I saying? It's not a reliance as much as a respect, but also it's analogizing to a broader category of experience with him in relation to solving your own problems in a way. You probably realize that or experience that the benefit he's able to provide, it goes beyond the specifically medical. He's your husband. He's not just your heart doctor, but the things you value in him are some in some ways tied to that. Of course, his professional competence, he's succeeded. We all have to demonstrate that in some ways. But, there's a certain competence or value in the world just in general. That's, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with people that don't amount to much in some way. Like, they're still valuable too. But what am I trying to get at? The idea of it isn't the value of his heart-saving ability that is relevant to this. That's just how you're analogizing it. There's some other element of your relationship with him that is coming into play here, that you're showing yourself through this dynamic. Does that kind of make sense?
What makes sense, and this might be what you're alluding to, but I'm not sure, is that I was interested in the wellness field. I've been interested for many, many years because of my own health issues, but they weren't like significant enough. I didn't have like diabetes or heart issues or things like that, but I had ailments throughout my life that have improved as a result of these changes that I made. But I was interested before I met him, and I didn't want to go into medicine. So I found I wasn't even happy about the way medicine is practiced. So it was weird when I met a doctor. When I met him, I didn't even know he was a doctor. When he told me he was a doctor, I was disappointed because I had my prejudices against Western medicine because I kind of take more of the holistic approach. But I've had these interests of mine for a long time, being more natural and holistic, and even moving away from chemicals and environmental things that could affect our health. And then I met him, and we became very interested in this work of helping people together. How I rely on him is that I become very passionate. So it was my idea to start the podcast. It was my idea to start the support group. There are many things that I'm the driving force behind when it comes to working with people in this capacity, because he's got enough to do in medicine. He doesn't need more work. But I started to create all these things that I need him for because I'm just an average person that no one would listen to if I didn't have the doctor.
Yeah.
That's where I
get that perspective.
Yeah. In other words, like I started my podcast with him, but we couldn't do it together as much. So a lot of times it was my solo episodes, because he's very busy. And then now I'm bringing him back on the show for shorter segments that are doable for him. So we can sit one day and record several episodes ahead of time, as you know how that works as a podcaster. And that's more doable. And people are excited about it. And I need him in that way, not so much maybe to validate my work. And now that I think about it, I was going to say not so much to validate. The thing is that I do a lot of my own research on my own, and I bring on other health experts, but I feel that I have to do so much. I'm not even trained in medicine, but if you saw on the other side on my camera, my library of books, so that I can be well informed, so that I can have these conversations with the doctors. It's so, I don't want to just ask a question. I want to have an idea of how they would respond, so that I can, continue the conversation. So there is a lot of pressure on my end, a lot of stress to be well informed. And last night, I'm having a conversation with my husband over dinner about diabetes, and that would be our next group of episodes. And I'm picking his brain, and I do that a lot, actually. I ask a lot of questions to be informed, but also because I'm curious. Like I said about, body works, I'm fascinated with our bodies, with the ability of our bodies to be able to heal when it's given that opportunity. So in many ways, I am obsessed about health.
Yeah.
So
I'm fascinated by the body and how everything works.
Yeah, I worry about his health because he works a lot, and he prioritizes his patients a lot. We are both two people that it's hard for us to say no to people.
Gotcha.
So we both have to practice on putting our
big old bleeding hearts, huh?
But the difference between both of us, well, there are a lot of differences, but he's definitely more of a leader. Like he knows how to lead a group. He has stronger boundaries than I do in
Gotcha.
many areas of his life. And I'm more like, yeah, but I definitely need the doctor. I
For
definitely
sure.
need him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'd say that's a good thing to know, and it's a relationship level, and it's also relevant to your work. I think you're both in the same business in a way, and I'm not someone who is. There's a weird thing of like I'm not a credentialist in terms of, well, if you don't have a degree, I have nothing to say to you. People
Right.
can be experts in a lot of ways. There's no degree to be a dream wizard. I'm just a guy doing a thing. And if I can demonstrate I've got the ability, do I need a degree? But then again, there's the degrees used to mean more in some ways. And I think in terms of a heart surgeon, they still do. You've gone through the residency, you've proven you can do this. And tolerably well that someone said, good luck and go into private practice. So there's a value to it that is getting muddied lately. And we should never confuse the fact of degrees, often meaning competence, with the fact that someone can have no degree and be extremely competent. They just life experience and independent study. So, yeah, I didn't mean to suggest that you conceive
Yeah.
yourself as someone without value outside of his input. Definitely not. Not.
But you know what? In that
Yeah,
sense, in terms of me being like a little more vulnerable about it, I have, on my podcast, I often say, "Well, I'm not the doctor." And I remember
fair enough.
someone, a friend of mine, who, she's so sweet to me. She one day she said, Maya, every time you say that, it hurts me that you
Oh,
feel the
yeah.
need to say that you're not a doctor because you have so much value that you give. And I have physicians that come on my show and thank me for the platform that I've created because maybe they don't have time to create a podcast,
Right.
but there's
Yeah.
this message that needs to get out. And some of my favorite people that I watch don't have huge titles. Like when I talk about YouTubers or even podcasters, people that I learn from may not have all these credentials, but
Yeah.
the passion and their dedication to what they're creating is enough for me to tune in. So
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah, it's easier for me to see it in someone else than it is for me to see it within myself.
For sure. That brings us back around to, so the reason I'm spending so much time on kind of conceptualizing this is that it's the main drama of the dream in a way. Like this is the big thing that happens, and then there's consequences afterwards. You've got a kind of 3-act play in a way. Um, so maybe it's both. Maybe I had it wrong to begin with. I'm looking at what element of you might this be to learn about yourself, but you also may, at the same time, there's lots of dual layers of consciousness going on in dreams too. It also may be literally a third person who is, in that sense, having an emergency, and you are putting yourself in the situation. What do I do when I see someone in distress who needs help? What are you doing, boo boo? Hi. Do not walk on my
Oh,
keyboard.
cutie
Yeah.
pie.
This is
I
my
love
boy
it.
CC. He's an old man. He'll walk on the
Oh,
keyboard. He will lay on the keyboard and get comfortable. No, no. Uh, that's part of that. We got cats back here
oh,
too, sleeping. Got a
I
whole thing.
love
Oh, wait, we
it.
got another one on the pillow right there. Dude, my baby girl.
Oh, yeah. How many
They're
cats do you
everywhere.
have?
Yeah. And then, oh, there he is. Yeah. Um,
Oh, they're
so you also maybe, as a dual layer, putting yourself in this situation of, let me imagine what it's like to see a person who needs an emergency help. I'm the one to notice it. I'm the one to take action. There's a big metaphor in there for your life of like, I'm trying to reach out to people who may be in distress. Maybe they're overwhelmed by their lives. They're having a problem. And this person had a problem to the point where your noticing was too late, not your fault. And even the
yes,
skills of your husband, who you think superior to your own in certain medical things, which education and experience, not nothing derogatory against you to conceive that. It's maybe factually
sure.
correct. Even he couldn't save that person. This was actually someone beyond your reach, and you had to process witnessing this and trying to help.
Yes.
And so here's one thing I thought way back in the beginning, we kind of come back around to. You may be considering the fact that your best efforts will fail for a lot of people. They will be
Yes.
disinterested. They will get the message too late. You're having a moment with that. What does that make you think?
Yeah, it's I understand that actually is the reality of it all is that because we as individuals we're driven to behave certain ways for many different reasons that we may
Mm-hmm.
never, I can't fully impact people. I can only do so much, and only a handful of people will actually want to create that change. And I think what is hard for me is when we're talking about the, like in my dream, having seen that person, it's too late. There was nothing I could have done to help that person, and the
Yeah.
expert couldn't do anything. It was too late. I think sometimes it comes out of, conversations that I'll have with my husband with a certain patient, and it doesn't happen often, but if a patient passes, my husband internalizes that. It
Yeah. It's hard not to.
he come he comes home and he's depressed, not profoundly depressed, but
Yeah.
you can tell he probably had a good cry in his car on the
Yeah.
way
I mean,
home.
to put it mildly, it's a bummer. It's not a good day. It's not something
Right.
to be happy
Yeah.
about or celebrate. Yeah. It's the
And
very
then
much
that
opposite.
energy, yeah, and then that energy affects me. But
Yeah.
it's more like when you hear of a person suffering and you feel helpless, like you feel that there's nothing that you can do. And I sometimes have to again remember that this person's journey here in this world is their experience, that maybe, if depending on how you view life and why we're here, maybe that person chose to live that reality. And so it's the hard part
It's a
isn't
valid theory.
not wanting to internalize it,
Yeah.
not wanting to feel like it was my fault, like if only, because it's
Yeah.
just, then I'm just spinning the wheels. Like there's no point in all of that. It feels like wasted energy to dwell on something that I had no control over.
Yeah. It's good to really conceptualize it that way too. Like you have a person who you arrived just in time in their life in general to see them maybe at their worst before the end. And you think to yourself, if only I had been able to meet one of 7 billion people years ago. Wait a minute. Is this in any way realistic? Is this a burden you can put on yourself? Like, what, how are you supposed to
Yeah.
do that? Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't affect you, but we can laugh at it because that's so irrational. It's like, but we can't help but feel that way. Man, I
Yeah.
wish I could have done something sooner to help someone. Maybe I could have said something different or given them, it's one of those things where and that's a function of the fact that we care and we don't want to stop caring. So it's like, in order
Yeah.
to make it stop hurting, we would have to be a person who doesn't care. I don't know that
But in
many of
many
us want that.
ways, I appreciate this conversation, Ben, because in many ways it might help me to reflect on how I'm internalizing things and how profoundly I'm making my work mean, when in
Yeah.
reality I could probably enjoy it all if I just relax about it. In other words,
Yeah.
like, yeah, I don't think I will ever stop caring, but I think if I say, okay, may I plant these seeds, and wherever the seeds fall, may they flourish and be nourished and grow
Yeah.
somewhere, wherever that is. And it might not fall on all ears whenever we do any, like in many ways for us, it's like sometimes some of the work that we do feels like a sacrifice, because we're burning the candle at both ends with the hope that this
Mm,
message will reach somebody, and then it might not even feel, it's just random. It's whoever listens.
yeah.
Every blue moon someone will say, I changed my life because of your recommendations, and then that kind of helps the cause.
For sure.
If that
Yeah.
makes
And that's a
sense. Yeah.
delicate balance sometimes. And no wonder it would take an intensely meaningful dream or other meditative dwelling upon the subject to say, how do I take something seriously because I believe it's meaningful and do it in the right way for the right reason. But also enjoy the process such that I'm not beating myself up if I fail to deliver. There's
Yes.
something in there.
That's
The
pretty
idea
good.
of, I don't know if you can think of a way to phrase it better. It's like, you don't want to enjoy the process so much that you care for you. Like, I don't really care what happens, whatever, listen,
Yeah.
don't, but also not beating yourself up too much. There's too much pressure on yourself that doesn't need to be there, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, yes, I agree with you, because so this event, online event we held recently, on Saturday, was very much, you know, for support groups in a way, if you want to put it that way, from throughout the country. And we stayed on afterwards, after we got off the live stream. And we're talking, and many times we're all kind of very serious because it's like
Mm.
we're very, I almost feel like people that are called to serve, and it could be in any field. You know, you can work in a church setting, you can work as a psychologist, whatever field that is in the helping field. I think people that are naturally called to serve others um we tend to be very serious about this work.
We take the
It's, you know,
responsibility very
gotta
seriously. Yeah.
we feel like we got the world in our hands, like it's our responsibility to take care of this planet, or whatever it may be. And instead of just being a little bit lighter about it, and even maybe even playful, and having
Yeah.
a little more
That's the
fun
idea.
about it.
Playful without being flippant. It isn't like this doesn't
Yeah.
matter, but I'm not going to make it more miserable than it needs to be by being a stuffed shirt in a way, or
Yeah.
not allowing myself to enjoy it. That's why I try to be a goofball and just let people be
Right.
comfortable, because you can't do this any worse than I do. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just a guy talking to people on the internet who thinks he's a wizard. Who the hell am I? And I say that like in one of those ways where it's like, I don't want people to read it like you feel of like, oh, I'm not the doctor. But in a way, it's very true for me too. I'm like, I want you to know exactly how much I don't take myself seriously. I take the subject matter seriously. I'm just the guy doing the thing, and we're going to get there together. And hopefully I'm going to bring something unique to the table. And I think, people tell me I do, and I try not to self-aggrandize. That's like, I want to believe I'm competent. I don't want to believe I'm better than I am. Get a big head, prideful, that kind of thing. But the playfulness
Right.
versus being flippant has got to be in there. Yeah.
Yes, yes, very much
And,
so. And it's interesting, lifestyle medicine there's a group that's part of lifestyle medicine that focuses on happiness. So when we get together, we try to raise each other's vibration. So we do something fun,
yeah.
just to snap out of that thought process of, being too focused on our missions, and so I joined the group specifically because I want to focus and not the fake, oh, I'm happy, nothing's bothering me, but more like, what can I do right now to raise my energy so that I feel better, so that I can feel lighter? And so it's definitely an area that I want to work on in my life so that I can lighten up a little bit.
Yeah. The phrase that just came to my mind, and I've flipped back and forth. I'm like an agnostic, atheist, deist kind of thing. Yada yada yada. To put it in context, a typically Christian phrase. So I'm not a Christian, but a phrase that came up was
Mhm.
joyful worship. There's something in
Ooh,
there, right? Doesn't that kind of resonates, right? That idea of
yeah.
worship is something important. This is meaningful to me. I'm doing it for a reason, but I'm joyful about
Mhm.
it in a way where I'm not being dragged kicking and screaming into it. I'm not taking it unseriously. I'm having as much fun as I can, but I'll over explain it and lose the magic. But that's kind of what we're doing with these, me talking about dreams, you talking about holistic nutritional health and different stuff. There's a joyful worship of the importance of the subject matter, and that the experience that we're bringing to people about it. It's like the
Yes.
method and the goal, means and the ends, something like that.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that when you see footage, stock videos, B-roll or commercials or whatever of someone, even when big pharma, I shouldn't say that, when you see this pharmaceutical commercials on TV, and they're all, whatever it may be, whatever product people are selling, when they're conveying to you that you'll be healthier.
Yeah.
And there's usually you're walking and smiling and strolling through the park, and what
That's like
health
the
and wellness
classic.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That's what there's always a smile. It's not like you're healthy and you're sitting there drinking tea quietly. It's like this movement and happiness and joy. That is
Yeah.
exactly what you say, that joyful worship is that's kind of in my own life what I'm thriving for is, and even thriving is a word that I want in my life, to feel like I'm thriving in what I'm doing, not that I'm a prisoner of my work.
For sure. Yeah. And then to compare the two. So you've got a very interesting
Mhm.
thing going on there where I'm trying to be both the expert and the entertainer in a way, the podcaster and the professional. You've actually got that a little divided up. Like you would probably look at your husband and say, he doesn't know half as much as I do about editing, about scheduling conflicts, about a lot of putting together different things. So you
Mhm.
probably have more skill than you, like if you step back and you look at it and you go, Wow. I mean, I'm not a heart surgeon, but actually the heart surgeon can't do what I do. He just doesn't have the information. He hasn't put the invested effort. He has not developed those skills. And then you realize the comparative skills are that you have more value than you thought you did going into it. Of like, that what you do is more important than just a vehicle to get him on the air. There's something there of like, you're coming into your own in terms of your own value as a content creator and a message deliverer type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's something there too. It's like this, what you're back to the dream, what you're considering is this situation where you're going to have to confront the idea that you can't help everybody, that some people are going to literally die. I mean, that's the worst thing that could possibly happen. And even your husband's level of skill that is different than your own, maybe not better, just different, is not going to save him. Like even the two of you coming together to notice and intervene is not going to do it. So you have the experience of this person expiring. You want to confront the reality. And this may go back to what you were saying about the weekend and dreaming. I don't know if your camera might have froze again.
Uh-oh.
I think it did. Yeah. Bloop,
Okay,
bloop.
hold on.
That's okay. We'll just keep fixing it. You're back. It's all good. No, the idea that you stayed after to talk to people at this conference, even if it was just online. And there's always one more email than you can answer. There's always one more person that wants your attention. You got to say, I got to go home and sleep. So at some point you're going to feel a dramatic, intense responsibility for the one person you could have worked a little harder to save. Might that have made the difference if you had just sacrificed a little more sleep? That's never going to go away. That idea that you just cannot help 7 billion people right now, all at the same time. And that's, so confronting that, saying, how am I going to continue doing what I think is meaningful, knowing I'm going to disappoint myself on some level, even if I know it's physically impossible, I have to deal with that emotional disappointment. I think does it feel like there's something going on there with this person in this setting? Is that speaking to something important? Maybe I'm projecting. Like, I think of that too. I can't talk to everybody or answer every email.
Right. It's sounding, I'm aligning with what you're saying. And I'm also thinking, two things that, we definitely realize that as a team, my husband and I, we sort of need each other. If we don't have each other, we would have to hire a team.
Right.
So if all the things that I do, you would have to hire people to do everything that I do. But so
nice
he
complementary yin yang fitting together, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And he definitely credits me in public. He lets people know I wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for Maya, or there's just no way I can do all of this. So he definitely credits me that in that way. And as
That's
we're
wonderful.
having one of our
wise man.
Yeah, I got that. So as we're redesigning one of our websites, because we're changing the name of our local group to all go under Healthy Lifestyle Solutions, because it's kind of pretty much the same thing. So as we're talking about what we would like the website to look like, he said, we should write down our mission statement, because he's very clear in his practice. That's one of the things in terms of when he first started having a mission and things that are important to him was very important. And every time there's a staff meeting, they go over that. And so it made sense that we should have sort of a clarity. You start the work, it's like you start whatever it is that you're working towards with a passion, and then you're just all over the place. Yes, I can do that, and I can do that, and you get distracted instead of having like clarity. What is our ultimate goal?
Yeah.
What do we want to focus on, and maybe narrow that down, and having that. It's amazing what one mission statement could do. Whether it's 1 or 2 sentences or however long, but just having some clarity of what your goals are so that you don't spread yourself thin.
Yeah. How do you know you're
really
doing what you're intending to do? What does it look like to get the job done? Yeah.
That's right.
For sure.
That is right. I feel like with the podcast, I have clarity. In terms of how I'm curating the show, what my mission is. I feel that it's very clear. That's how I can be selective of my guests, because I understand, I know. But then we do other work outside of that. Like I said, whether it's become very virtual, but it's very similar to what we were doing locally. And with that, we're just all over the place. No clarity. We're just like, yes, we want. So I think, I appreciate this non-counseling
Right.
session here because I think it's helping me to understand where I need, how I can alleviate some of that burden, that what
For
feels
sure.
like burden.
Yeah. Well, and I resonate with that extremely well too about clarity of purpose. Like doing this show, we're just talking to people. I
Mm-hmm.
kind of understand. I get it. I know what I'm doing here. I know what the purpose is. Give you a good answer. I've
Mm-hmm.
had a recent opportunity lately that I've been sitting on because it is to do maybe half-hour web streamed classes on different topics. Now, I can bring whatever my unique special. I could talk about it in a dreams context. I could talk about it in a psychology context. I can just do broad philosophical strokes on here's how to understand this idea and work it into your life and your thought process. Because
Mm-hmm.
I can go so many different directions with it, I don't have a handle on anything, and I have not put I can't, it's like I can't conceptualize how I would do it. Therefore, I don't know
Mm.
how to do it. It's my very autistic thing of like, I need to put it in a box. Okay, first I need to make a box. First, I need the materials for a box. Shit. And I'm all over the place. Like, I don't even know where to begin. So I haven't, so there's, I need a clarity of purpose of like, why would I, not why would I do this? I like sharing, educating, etc. But like, what would be what would it look like for me to do it right? I can't get a grip on that. So I'm not offering to put myself in a position where maybe I should. Maybe I should. This is a challenge. I, okay, there's two things. Maybe I should personally, for me, put myself in a position where someone says, topic, go. And I'm like, whoa, I'm unprepared. I'll just tell you what I think. The problem is these online classes are kind of paid, and I have a big problem with saying, show up, maybe I'll have something interesting to say. You already paid. I'm like, I don't, that doesn't feel right to me. So I'm putting a tremendous amount of pressure on myself to make this worthwhile, to give them
Yeah.
something to make, make it worth their money for real. So I've
Right.
been avoiding engaging with that opportunity for that reason. So what?
Is it is it hard for you to accept the idea of is of monetizing or
Yep.
getting paid
Yeah.
for all that you're offering?
Feeling
Because
that
it's
my work,
from
that's why I go with the books, because that's, you could put it in your hand, man. I put blood, sweat, and tears into that, literally paper cuts. And, that's, I will hawk the books all day. Those are damn good. Me rambling, just getting by on my personality, thinking I have something valuable to say, that it's hard. It is. Even if you tell me after this experience this was great, I'm like, I could have done it better. I'm really
right.
hard
Well,
on
we're hard
myself.
on our
I
yeah.
am. But I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to put myself out there. So
But it's very it's interesting because I struggle with that as well. And
yeah,
my husband, on the other hand, who is more of an entrepreneur, has no problem charging for his services outside of medicine if he does something else. The what's interesting about what you're saying is I'm the person that I'll buy the book, I'll buy the class, if I can afford it, right?
yeah,
Not everybody can afford certain things, but I think the hard part that we have with you and say even myself is that, um, well, I'll go back to how we basically buy a personality. If I like the individual and I admire the individual, I enjoy what they have to offer free of charge, whatever it may be, live webinars or going live on YouTube or the podcast, whatever it may be. If I enjoy the person and I find value in who they are, as soon as they release a course, I'll buy it. If they have a
okay,
book, I'll definitely buy it.
yeah,
If they have a community that I can pay a little bit to join, I will be part of that because as a learner and as someone who feels connected that way to people, like Patreon, like we're patrons of a couple of sailing channels. And
nice,
we've been patrons for a long time because it's something we enjoy, sailing. We enjoy these creators, but one in particular, they have meetups and they recently they're in the top 5 of sailing channels in terms of big channels on YouTube.
gotcha,
And they're out of Dallas, even though they haven't lived here like 15 years. And they had a recent meetup for their patrons, and I loved it. We've been supporting them for quite a while, and I love coming around other people that love them as well. And I thought it was a great idea. So if they ever, I said to her, to the female, when are you going to come out with a cookbook? Because you cook some great meals on the boat. And I
And that's a
love you. I'm learning so much.
unique
And she's like,
skill,
well,
how to cook on a boat. Limited space,
yes,
supplies. You don't have a giant kitchen full of giant pots and pans. You got to make it work with what you got. Yeah.
that's
That's,
right. And she
yeah.
said to me, and this is interesting. She might have something going on working already, but didn't want to say. She said, I don't know how I would do that because I don't use recipes. I just put things together. And I said,
Mm.
that's exactly what you need to teach people because on a sailboat, depending, you only have access to food when you're on land, and then you have to provision
Mix it
for
with
your
whatever
long
fish you can
trips.
catch. Yeah.
Yeah, so you become creative. You can only freeze food for so long, or have storage space, so much storage space, and then sometimes when they touch land, she buys like the fresh fruit and vegetables from the local markets,
And you got to
and
plan
so
ahead. You got to know what you need and you
yeah,
get it because it's not like you run home from the store and you can just, oh, I'll go back. I forgot the eggs. You're
right.
out to sea. What are you going to do?
That's right. So it's that creative aspect of how she makes these delicious meals that is I'm already I have it on my list. As soon as she releases a cookbook, I'm buying it.
Nice.
Right. And
Very
so
nice.
because she's a personality that I already enjoy. And I think that's the part that we forget is that we are who we are. And our listeners are the people that are already invested in us. They already
It's
like
true.
us. They're
Yeah.
probably waiting for us to release something so that because that gives them more access to who we are, whether
It's
it's
true.
a personal story, a journey, a cookbook, sharing our stories in something they can touch,
Yeah.
even merchandise like t-shirts. They want that from us.
Yeah. I have put a few things out there. I don't feel as it's definitely a comfort level with hawking it, so to speak. I'll hawk the books all day and some of the other stuff of like, I don't think I've mentioned that I have a locals, page. Um, But there's another interesting connection before I lose it. The idea of you enjoy sailing, so you do enjoy the ocean and boats, and you've
Yes.
got this
Yeah.
interesting dream experience where you're on a boat that's much too big with way too many people. There's something in there as well. The dogs get a little fidgety. I don't know if you mind if we take a quick 10. I'll let them outside to go to the
Yeah,
bathroom.
my dog too. He's in the crate. I kind of need to see how he's at.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
should
Let's
I?
take 10 minutes and we'll just come. I'm gonna leave the
Okay.
video running. Sorry about that. It took him forever to poop, and then he had a fur malfunction where
Oh,
his
that's okay.
yeah, we're gonna go wash his butt later. He can sit on the bed for a minute. We'll wash the blankets later too.
It's funny. My dog is learning to be crate trained, so he's fine. I put him in, but as soon as I let him out, he was just like, oh,
Going nuts.
running all over the house. And then, of course, I took him out for a potty break, and so, but he gets very anxious being in the crate. Oh well,
Fair enough. Yeah. No. That's
he's
good. I'm
learning.
glad you were able to get the time you need. I hope I didn't keep you waiting too
But
long.
yeah, but he's here now. I give him a treat. He's munching on his treat, so
Good.
he's fine.
Yeah. Let him
It's
run
more
around.
like if I had let him this whole time out of the crate, he would have been barking at the door and everywhere
Oh.
else. So
Yeah. No,
he's
that's
fine.
okay. Well, I think we're almost done. We're getting down to the
Okay.
last little bit of analysis of the symbology. I mean, we got a lot already. If you were like, I need to go, we could wrap it up. But
Yeah.
before we took a break, I'd mentioned the idea of comparing the little boat to the big boat and too many people and your
Oh,
love of the ocean.
yes.
And did anything come to you regarding that?
So it's interesting that you mentioned that because I had mentioned to you that I have two different recurring dreams,
Mm-hmm.
and one of them um, includes water. And when I was, when I typed an email to you or message, and I told you that I love the water. I'm a water sign. Water is my element. So I revere water. I
Mm.
guess you can say, like, I don't fear it, but I respect it.
I have a connection to
Like
it
I
as well.
respect.
Pisces. So
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Okay. Then you know.
yeah.
I respect water. So I'm not afraid to swim,
I mean,
but I know that water can do whatever it wants in its own space and all of that.
yeah.
So anyway,
Literally a force of
so it's
nature to be
interesting.
respected. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting when in one of my previous dreams that I tend to always have, it's like I'm on the road and for some reason the water level is pretty high, like I'm on a bridge kind of, and
Come here.
suddenly the water seems to want to consume everything. And I was telling you about that because I was like, I wonder if I should share that dream. That was one of the dreams that I wanted to share. It's always that water element comes around and there's storms and waves from the ocean that want to consume either the road that I'm in or the home that I'm at. And so when you were so when we're comparing a cruise, being on a cruise, as opposed to a sailboat, we're still in the water.
Yeah.
And in both, you can, depending on where you're at, you feel that the force of the water and all of that. But yeah, so I'm bringing it back to that. But in neither one of those occasions do I feel fear of the water, even though I know I'm in a vulnerable state. Like if the perfect storm comes through, I'm gone, even if I'm in a ship, you know?
For sure. Yeah. So what we're where we're at in the dream is you've got your conceptual framework in a way, like here's the situation you're in, here's the kind of experience you're having, here's the element, the drama of that experience that you wanted to focus on. What happens when you get to that? You're gonna drive me crazy, boy. Come here. Now he wants to play. There you go. Speaking of dogs, get him crate trained. Now you're going to deal with the aftermath in a way. It's like, okay, let's follow this thought through to, and the cats are coming up here. we had a blissful moment of calm seas with the animals, and now they're going to
really, I know.
Gotta love metaphors. What happened was that after he, and it says you look up and to the left, and that there's this display of the coffins.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this and whether it makes sense in this connection, but a lot of people look up and to the left when they're accessing memory and conversation. I don't know if that means anything to you or.
Yes. Yeah. Is it to the left when they're trying to access and to the right when they're trying to make up, kind of when they're lying
in a way, but not like a lie necessarily, but like imagining. Let me create versus
trying to be
remembering.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I think memory. Okay, to the left.
And I could have it backwards. I don't know, but it only really is relevant if that's your conception of it. Like I can throw that out there, but for me to say that's what it means is not the same as that's how you conceived it and what it means to you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. So right now, a memory doesn't come to play, and I say coffin. That was the best way that I could describe because it's like the bodies are in the ship.
That was the other thing. I was like, where are they in the physical environment?
Yeah. So if we were all sort of pressed against the hull of the ship, the bodies are in a compartment within that hull of the ship, but upper left.
Gotcha.
So I see them open on the side, like an opening, rather than I describe them as coffins because there were dead bodies in there. Yeah. It's not like they were being hidden, but instead of opening from the top, they open from the side.
You got that kind of a cutaway side view in a sense.
Cutaway.
Yeah. And that's probably more relevant is it happened to be that there was an element of the ship. So what you're viewing is in relation to this being an element of the ship you're on. This is a feature of the environment in which you find yourself in a way. And what you're seeing, I want to find a better way to say that. The idea of what we base our understandings on is observation in a way. So it's like, here's something that's just a fact of the physical space. There's something of that idea.
Well, okay, here's something interesting that I had not mentioned. It's going to sound weird, but the hull of the ship itself, the color was black. Okay. It's like a black ship.
I think they painted the Titanic black. The hull.
I was going to say the same. I was like, now that I think about it, because what other ship, you'd never go on a cruise that's black?
White or blue. I mean, the black is not a friendly color in a way.
It's not. Yeah. And you think of like I don't even know if you would say a pirate ship or I don't know, because then you in
black sails,
you think of
flag.
wooden or
but
now that you put it that way, I mean that's what the color felt like. I mean it looked black. So what ship would be black? Like you said, a cargo ship.
Sure. Yeah.
But yes. Yeah.
Very, very much
Titanic.
so. And this also deals with people's conceptions of stuff. So why would they paint the Titanic black? They weren't suggesting this is a boat of death. They thought black was a very regal color. It was a color of something stately and important. That idea of course the ship would be black as a person wears a black tuxedo to a fancy event. That's kind of the meta message of the color at the time. But now it's more like they want you to think of, bright, all the things associated with brightness and light and happiness and fun on the ocean. So you got the Carnival Cruise Line, and it's a bright white ship. It's like gleaming in the sunshine, and so there's a advertising crafting of a message to the choice of a color of the boat. So for you, what you're seeing is this cutaway, and there's people in there. One of them's a woman, and one of them you don't know. That's interesting
Right.
too. You're not certain what the other person is, but there's at least two of them. And you are very much aware that is you that is looking at this. Like you're not looking at yourself from suddenly a third person camera. I mean, it's not you. The woman is not you.
No,
Okay.
I didn't feel like it was me.
Gotcha.
It just looked gruesome. That's what stood out. So it was like I saw the person that collapsed, right? The initial person that I saw ended up on the ground, and we were done. Like we couldn't save that person. And then I look up and I see two corpses, or whatever you want to call them, because they were also like that Body Works display. And it just was a gruesome death.
That
Like,
one you
just
said,
death. Like,
had more of like the man who died, his decomposition was more clean. It was more analytical, the observation of it. And the corpses you were looking at were a little more actually closer to what you might imagine someone decomposing looks like, or
yes. Not
gotcha.
only that, the individual that collapsed was wearing clothes. So I remember he was wearing like a white button-up shirt, like just a dress shirt.
Yeah.
I remember that. Probably had a tie, but I definitely remember a white shirt. And that the corpse were naked. She was facing down, but kind of sideways, because I could see her face. And that was
Interesting.
it.
Yeah.
She was
Not
kind
in
of
a-
like being stored. That's why I called
Yeah.
it a coffin.
Not in a very classic state of dignified repose we would find someone in an actual coffin, say at a funeral home. This is a family member's body who's been treated with respect. This is someone, it's almost just a body that's been discarded haphazardly in a way.
Almost. Yeah. Or like,
There he is. There he is.
when you think about it, in this place, in this location where she was at, it was almost like she was being stored, almost like in a, not a funeral home. What's the other place?
Morgue?
Where they put them in. Yes, like a mortuary. Is that
Gotcha.
how you say it?
Yeah.
Mortuary. Like, they keep them in, it looks like these stainless steel kind of drawers in a sense. It seemed like that. Like she was just being kept there, stored.
Yeah, and I think the position of the body does very much suggest, we think of the respect we pay to the person the form used to contain, in a sense. We know they're not in there anymore. It's the remains, but we put them on their back, face up. We put their hands over their chest. We compose them on purpose, but you've shown yourself something that is, what happens if you say dump a body in a mass grave? It tumbles over until it lands in an undignified position that is kind of mostly, but not entirely face down, and it's in poor shape. So there's something very, so you might be imagining to yourself, the consequences that you're going to feel maybe like you haven't been respectful of a person if you allow them to end up in a state because you didn't get there in time, or couldn't provide what was needed to save them. It feels to you, the end result feels to you disrespectful. Is there something in there?
Yes, almost like discarded. I think you might have used that word. So kind of discarded, and also almost with the intention of hiding those bodies, but I noticed them. Like no one else was supposed to see them, but I noticed them.
Yeah, and there's something in there too from your personal perspective, in a way, the idea of if you say from your own perspective, fail to help someone you could have because you didn't try hard enough and they end up dying, that feels disrespectful. And no one's going to know unless you tell them. No one's going to tell you, no one's going to know you refuse to help someone unless you broadcast it. So something you could hide. And you probably don't feel comfortable with that idea either of putting on a false display of caring more than you do. None of this is meant to say this is the truth or this is necessarily what you want in any way, shape, or form, but that internal experience of working your way all the way through the problem and saying, I might end up in a situation where where I feel shame for a lack of effort, and wondering how you're going to process that, knowing that that is how I will feel if I set a boundary and don't take the 11th person that day. Maybe I had time, but I wanted to go home and drink a cup of tea for myself because I need to recharge and my boundaries are important. Knowing that 11th person might not get the benefit of help, and you're going to feel bad about it afterwards. And you're going to have to live with that feeling because it comes from inside you. It's not something you can actually hide from yourself. You're going to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I would not have considered that, but I think you're right in the sense that, I noticed that body, right? No one else noticed it. So
yeah, it's almost like it only
what was
exists
her
for you.
story? How come I didn't reach her before she died? Like, whatever that was.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a tremendous burden that people, and this connects to the whole theme we've been talking about, I think, of the idea of caring passionately enough to motivate action that is beneficial to others, and knowing when you've done enough to maintain your own health and provide as much value as you reasonably could. That whole idea of reasonableness. How do I feel like I've done everything I can in a way that doesn't exhaust me and burn me out and leave me quitting helping anybody or sacrificing my own health to the point where it declines? And that's a struggle that everyone has to work out for themselves, except the rare person who's legitimately a psychopath and doesn't care if anyone gets hurt. They treat people like objects anyway. So anyway, like I say, anyone who's not a psychopath, and even some psychopaths for purely instrumental reasons, ride that line between, I'm doing as much as I reasonably can and I'm okay. I have to find a way to live with what I'm not able to do because it's unsustainable.
Absolutely. I think, what comes to mind right now is more of family members, like the people that I'm closest to that I care most about, my family members who, there are a lot of health issues in my family. And so that's also a driving force for me to want to help others is that
Yeah.
our family never really values our opinion. It feels like, right? Like, who are you to tell me? And so I might be the public, other people that I work with who seek us out might be more likely to make a change and have more interest in
It's
what we
true.
have to offer than our own families. And that's just, that expression, I don't know who said it, but I've heard it said, and it really stood out, was that you can never be a hero in your own home. And
Interesting. I
so,
haven't heard it phrased that way,
yeah,
but yeah, I get it.
yeah, that you got the therapist whose child is very disturbed, or
It's
you
true.
can find many ways to compare
Yeah,
that.
too
But
close to the
yeah,
problem. But also, it's like physician heal thyself. Even doctors have a doctor. They got to go see
yes,
somebody. Therapists have a therapist.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah. And so yes, there are people in my family who I'm very concerned about who are battling issues, and I can't get close enough I can't have an impact enough to help them, and without them feeling threatened or
controlled.
yes.
Yeah, like you're
And
trying to
so
impose your will on them. Yeah,
yeah. And or judged, even judged, I
yeah,
think, because
that's a
health is
big
so
deal too,
personal,
for sure.
very, very personal. And so they see the work that we're doing. And I particularly have one sister who feels that I judge her. When I'm
Oh,
with her, I'm not judging her.
yeah.
I don't judge what she eats. I don't judge her on anything she's doing. If anything, I've been the person that will drive down to see her when she's in the hospital as a result of health issues. And I'm there for her, but I'm not reprimanding. I'm not judging.
Yeah.
Like why didn't you take care of yourself? Nothing like that. And so it's her perception of how she thinks I'm judging her.
There's that projection again, right?
Right.
She's
It is. It
judging
really
herself.
is.
She's looking at your example and saying, I believe this is what she's thinking based on
Yes.
how I view myself, you know. And this is a tough thing too, is like we have a struggle as caring helpers. We can only offer advice and people have to decide if it's good for them or not and whether they
Right.
care enough to do anything about it. So I might say to someone who's, you know, strung out on heroin, I don't think this is good for you. And they're like, but I like it, man. And I'm like, well, you're probably going to die. And they're going to say, okay. And I'm like, well, I wish for something better for you, but you don't. And that's okay. I'll just love you anyway until you're not here anymore. And that's sad. That's tragic, you know. And I think we get into that situation with our family too, where there's the family dynamics. And even if you're an expert on something, it doesn't do you any good to browbeat them because they're going to make their own decisions, you know, as much as you want it for them.
I mean, I could be an investor, a financial advisor, you know, like say like in terms of money, that could be my strength.
Sure.
And if I try to come around my family and say like, oh, well, you might consider investing here and there or saving or this and that, they may not want to hear it because again, that's another very personal issue, money.
Yeah.
It's like anything else. If I come around and try to convert someone to a certain religion, that's going to hurt somebody. It's going to affect, I'm going to get some resistance there. And so, yeah, there are some topics that our families don't want to hear about, and they definitely don't want to hear it from us. And so I feel like health, money, religion, those kind of things can be very difficult conversations to have with the people that we're, in a way, the closest to, but not necessarily, maybe they're not the most open. And so maybe that has been a personal struggle of mine is not how do I love my family through their personal choices, but how can I love my family without being affected as much by their personal choices? Because at the end of the day, I'm the kind of person that I like people to have the freedom to be who they are. And same thing here. I don't want anybody preaching at me either. I don't want someone trying to impose their beliefs on me. So I want to allow people to be free to choose, but I don't want to be as affected, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And that seems very close. Like if we had to put together a story arc of the dream, which is what I like to do, try and sum it up at the end, you're very much looking at yourself in our dreams. We can't help but do this in some ways, a brutally honest self-assessment of like, here's exactly the problem you're facing. You care, you want to help, you can't help everyone, and you're going to have to draw a line that honestly makes you feel uncomfortable because you could have chosen to self-sacrifice more at the expense of your own health and well-being, and you're going to have to find a way to be okay with where you draw that line, wherever it is. And that's an amazing thing to just kind of recognize you're in the middle of that process so you can take it seriously and understand the question you're trying to resolve. Even if we don't consider the dream to have a message about what you should want or how you should resolve the question. That's kind of something I try not to do is say, this dream is telling you to do X, Y, and Z. Hell if I know, you know, I can tell you the dream says you're thinking about this in a particular way that's meaningful to you. And hopefully that gives you the perspective you need to say, yeah, I'm going to find that line and commit to it in a way that feels right for me. So,
yeah.
I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, this is, like I said, this is really going to help me to get more clear about where I'm going.
Yeah.
And
see the problem more clearly.
Like,
that's the first step.
Yeah, it's interesting, Ben, because it's a passion of mine to do the things that I love doing, what I'm doing now. It's a passion, and there's a lot of emotion behind that passion. But when I don't get the results that I'm looking for, it can also affect me. So it's more like put my emotions in check when I'm doing some of this work.
Yeah. In a way, how to be okay with inevitable failure in some circumstances. You're not going to win them all, you know, but you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, so to speak. So you got to do all those wonderful aphorisms that people say are meaningless. Like, no, it's contextual. It's not meaningless, but
right.
Good deal. Well, if you feel like your brain is full, which probably is, I talk a lot, we'll wrap it up. You feel like we've got at least a clearer idea of what the symbology meant to you personally, and you're satisfied with the answer, so to speak?
Yes. And as a matter of fact, if I were to have a recurring dream of this again or something like
Yeah.
that, I would probably feel more grounded. Like if I were to face this again in a dream, because I told you that some of my dreams come back and come back. It's like they just keep talking to me like, hello.
Yeah.
So if I were to have that dream again, I would probably step into that space with a different perspective and observe things a lot more, or being because there was a lot of fear in the dream, a lot of emotion
Yeah.
so I would definitely have a different perspective that would allow me to feel like I'm more in control.
I think so. Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
part of the
So
proof is in the pudding type of thing of like, how do you know we hit on something truly relevant? I mean, we can make a story that sounds like it kind of fits, but usually if it's a recurring dream, it stops coming back or the nature of the dream changes. I say this all the time, but I had one guy who, I think it was episode 12. He would attempt to enter an alleyway outside of the back of this house. And in the backyard between the house and the alleyway were shadow men that would beat the hell out of him if he tried to get past them. The next time he had that dream, he got back to me and he said the next time he had that dream, he didn't try to push past them and they didn't attack him. They're like, they felt more friendly because he wasn't trying to force his way past them and they had to respond by restraining him physically. That's powerful. That's like, I don't even know what to make of that. Like I had a hand in helping that happen. A recurring dream where he got beat, get the shit beat out of him nightly by these terrifying shadow creatures. And now they're like his friends and he just talked to them. I'm like, whoa,
that
I
is
love
so
it.
cool. You're very good at this.
Oh,
I'm
thank
really
you.
impressed. This is wonderful.
I appreciate that. I do. I have to learn how to get better at the compliments. I would like to believe I got a talent and I'm actually developing it by effort and that it has a positive impact. So I'm going to take you at your word.
Yeah, definitely. You do have a talent and you are developing it. And I try to study a little bit or at least analyze my dreams. And like you said, I would have looked up the word ship without understanding, like putting it within the context of all the other elements, all the other players in the dream. But I feel really, I feel like our conversation, like where we're at with this resonates with me. Like it feels true.
Good deal.
Like you said, like we could have made up a story, but I feel like I understand it a lot better now.
Good deal. Yeah. And I sincerely hope that it serves you well. It's the whole point of doing this, not just content, but like win-win situation. I get an episode, you get an answer. But in that very, very few things in life in general make me feel as good as knowing I provided something of value by native talent and effort and a desire to do good. And that's very meaningful. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, what do? We'll wrap it up and we'll talk for like 2 seconds afterwards to make sure no one's going to see this if you didn't give permission to release it. So I'm very serious about that. So we always talk afterwards, before and after. Let's do this thing. This has been our friend Maya Acosta out of Dallas, Texas. She is a health and wellness educator, podcaster, YouTuber like myself. You can go to healthylifestylesolutions.org, as well as get her podcast on a variety of social media and podcasting sources. Link in the description below. Forgot to say that earlier. And for my part, would you kindly like, share, subscribe, tell your friends? Always need more volunteer dreamers and viewers for video games and whatnot. Currently 16 currently available works of historical dream literature. The most recent, I've said 15 for like months, so it keeps coming out. Right here, I'm going to pop it up on the screen. It is Dreams and Their Meanings by Horace G. Hutchinson, golfer turned dream aficionado there in that book. And you can get all this and more at BenjaminTheDreamWizard.com. Also, BenjaminTheDreamWizard.locals.com. If you want to kick me $1 a month, I'd love it. I should be more confident in shilling for myself, begging for donations. I'm gonna try and get better at that. So just to wrap it all up, I'll say, Maya, it's been good talking to you. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Ben. This was wonderful. I appreciate it. This is real work. So I appreciate all the effort in helping me to understand my dream.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to say also to everyone out there in YouTube land, thanks for listening.